The story starts with a scene in a lab where people run down a corridor, and a man kicks open a door. His name is Hong Seok-young. One of his team members yells, telling him there are kids inside and glass shattering. Hunter Hong asks the kids if they are all right. He smiles warmly, saying they can come out now. The hunter picks up one of the kids, asking if the child is hurt anywhere. The kid looks over to see one of the scientists on the floor with a voice full of content. The child says the chief got what he deserved, begging for his life on the floor, which suits him. Hong asks the kids about his name, and the kid thinks for a second, asking what he needs to do to make this man mad. So, he tells the hunter that his name is number 12. Hong looks slightly annoyed, asking him if that is really his name, and then sets number 12 back down, kicks the chief in the stomach while yelling at him, and then continues beating the hell out of him. Meanwhile, number 12 admires the power, saying it cannot be looked down on. At the same time, a voice yells at Hong to stop beating that man, and he nervously asks the inspector what brings her here. Gassed out, she says she knows he will be doing something crazy like this again and to let the man go. The inspector sighs, saying she appreciates his help, but Hong makes things harder when he acts like this. Number 12, who is looking at her, asks if she is his boss, and she replies that this is not the case, but she is the one who scolds Hong when he does something bad. Number 12 says that is what a boss is about, and tells her how the lab chief always scolds the other members and how he hates the kids. She angrily looks over, saying that she will scold the bad man. Number 12 looks at her and says that she looks weak, asking if she is a hunter. The inspector replies that although she is not a hunter and she is not strong, he should not judge a book by its cover because there are plenty of ways to scold someone other than beating them up, just like she did to Hunter Hong. Hong catches a stray from her, and then 12 asks what he has to do to become like her. She pats his head, saying that he needs to study hard, pass an exam, and then make his way up the corporate ladder. 12 is amazed by the overwhelming power hunters display and the power of somebody who rules them. At this moment, he shapes his life. After that, 19 years have passed, and they are taken to the Ability Management Agency, ABA. An older version of 12 tells people about dungeons reaching a higher threat level, but everyone looks bored and is not paying attention to him. He looks around and says that even if they are low-rank dungeons, the threat level will rise if their interior is unstable, so he asks them to wake up and listen so they are not lost when they get there. Meanwhile, the hunter sits up and continues telling them that Team 2 will be in charge of the B2 rank dungeon. The hunter asks if there is any complaint. A woman says there is no complaint, then the number 12. HWE says Team 1 can take the dungeon. Teams 3 and 4 are resting because they just went into a dungeon recently, and another guild will take care of the mountain dungeon. He adds that they have prepared the equipment, so double check that nothing is missing. HWE looks at his watch, asking if they have further questions, but nobody says a word. He thinks so, tells them to get lunch, and tells the team to get on standby as everybody leaves. He sees one of the hunters, Yu Jian, not moving and asks her if there is any problem. She asks him if he remembers the dungeon and tells him about it. HWE looks at her and asks if she is talking about the one inside of Bangi Dom, saying it was only a D6 rank dungeon and that they only send people on rates once they reach level 2. Jian informs him that she has a bad feeling about it, and he sighs, saying that if they close dungeons based on feeling, they will get railed by the media, and she should not abuse her powers because she is an S-rank hunter. She barks back, saying that he is abusing his power, calling him a Nepo baby. HWE asks her if she has ever seen a more capable and skilled Nepo baby. Jian claps back, saying that she would have fired him a long time ago if he was not so damn good at his job. Then HWE jokingly says that he hopes she does not hit him. After that, she shifts to a serious tone, saying she feels bad about this dungeon. HWE smiles and tells her that it's too bad he's no longer available during business hours and not to contact him. Then, he closes the door, laughing and saying she could not contact him if she were inside the dungeon. Jian seems happy, and it jumps 2 days later inside Pan, and some women are asking about a watch. HWE smiles and says it is a masterpiece the Manhwa research lab created, but is still in the testing phase, so there are only 2 in the world. One of the girls says that he must be a great hunter, and then he says he has a license, but now he works at ABBA. HWE tells them that he is a direct affiliate of the agency directors. The girls say they recognize the director saying he is talking about Hong. He replies that it is embarrassing, but Hong is his father. The girls are surprised, but he tells them about his adopted father and how he was in an accident when he was a child and lost his parents. Hong saved and adopted him, so he has been working hard to repay that debt. Then HWE laughs while telling them not to think of him as a repo baby as he has worked hard for his position. The girls respond that, since Hong is known to be fair, he will not be a Nepo baby. HWE sips his drink, saying it was a lie, and that he is glad he has a hunter's license to use it like this. After that, one of the girls asks him why he came here, and he replies that he is on vacation to celebrate his promotion and does not want to, but is forced to take time off. One says it is never good to work all the time, and they are also here on vacation. He looks at them and asks if he is getting in the way, and they say no and ask him if he can show them what he did earlier. Hwee stretches his hand out, shows them a watch, and tells them it is the hunter. Moreover, he does not read all of that, and it is called a mono watch. The girls say it is not just a simple watch, asking how he uses it, and he replies that it recognizes Mona's patterns, so only he can use it. Then, he opens a status window showing the dungeon's threat level. One of the girls is confused, asking Hwee why one of the dungeon's threat levels is suddenly climbing because the blue status window shifts to red to show that the dungeon inside of Bangyi-dong is at a threat level of 0. Meanwhile, they get alerts on their phone saying there is a dungeon break, and they panic. Hwee gets a call on his phone, and someone tells him it is bad. He says he saw asking about the Bangyi-dong dungeon. Hwee says that he does not think it will be bad since it is just a D-rank dungeon. But the person on the phone tells him that it is not a D rank as half of the district was already wiped out right after it broke. Hwee's heart sinks, and he is full of disbelief when the person on the phone says that Hong is on his way right now. Hwee tells the person to calm down and that he will be on his way, saying to send a helicopter for him. They say, alright, and request him to hurry and jump inside the helicopter. He says there is no way the district would be gone, but it should be fine by the time he gets there as Hong is going. Hwee sighed and sang when he was starting his vacation, and then his boss notified him, and he wondered why it was going off. The helicopter pilot then tells him that there is something wrong and to look below, as they see monsters all around them, including some hentai monsters, weird eyeball dudes, and a bunch of goblins. At the same time, a new notification appears as every dungeon in the nation has broken open. Hwee realizes that they are screwed. So, he gets more alerts on his phone, saying that the dungeon breaks are not only happening in Korea but worldwide, and that the hunters who went on the raid with Hong have not been heard from. Hwee thinks they cannot return to Pan, so they should fly around and look for survivors. After that, it jumps to him, smacking a wolf across its face and then stabbing it in the head. Moreover, there are multiple bodies strung out along the road behind him, and he frantically opens his status window on the watch to check on Hong, but it says that his vitals cannot be dragged. Hwee starts to feel a sense of panic, wondering if Hong is dead, saying there is no way, because he just wanted a simple future, and to push all the annoying tasks onto others, living a comfortable life. He struggled a ton to achieve this, yet now it is all ruined as he desperately searches for a survivor. As he walks, Hwee hears coughing from behind and turns around. He turns and sees Yoo Jian lying on the ground and rushes to her, who he calls Annie. Jian looks at him and says she told him not to call her that while holding on to her stomach as she is bleeding out. Hwee sits close to her and asks what has happened to her. She replies that the centipede from the Bangyi-dong dungeon caused all this. After that, he pops the cork off a potion, and she says that pricey potion will not work here. Hwee tells her he will not know until he tries and starts pouring it on her. Jian responds that she warned him, but he ignores her hunter instinct. Hwee says there is nothing less trustworthy than a hunter's instinct, and she laughs, saying he is not wrong. Then he throws the empty potion away, and she tells him that she is done for reaching into her pocket. Then, Jian pulls out a dog tag, saying it belongs to Hong, saying surely he knows that Hong is dead. She brought it just in case, but she is glad she did. Hwee inquires why she is glad, and Jian replies that he should hold on to it as Hong's son, and Hwee tells her that he is not even Hong's real son. She replies that he should at least give Hong a proper funeral because he is Hong's adopted son, after all. Hwee responds that he will do that, but he does not want to give her a funeral, so she should not die. Jian goes to ask him why he is always joking around, but she can see that he has a serious expression on his face as he says he asks her not to die. Meanwhile, her hand is trembling, and she says she cannot control it, but she is lucky to have lived this long. After that, she looks off to the side, calling out to him, asking if he remembers when he used to follow her around and call her big sister, saying how he used to be so cute back then, but now he's just a brat. Jian tries to tell him to look behind for her sword, but he tells her to shut up, saying he has more potions. Then Hwee starts to cry, saying he will call her big sister again, and request her to keep quiet and not to die. Jian replies that she knows he is using a spear because of Hong, but taking her sword is still good. Then she musters up all her energy and smiles, telling him to make it out alive. Then her body goes limp in front of Jae, and he closes her eyes, asking how he is meant to survive in this world. Then, he stands up, picks her sword off the floor, and, in a broken voice, says that he hates this at the Ability Management Agency. At the same time, a giant centipede's corpse is behind him, and Hwee walks up, saying that he expected this and that being a hunter is hazardous. Still, it is a job for the strong, saying that it is crazy to see how many corpses there are here just to kill one centipede. Even the strongest hunter died, leaving nothing behind but a dog tag. He gets lost in thought, wondering what to do now, and wonders if he should find another survivor. But Hwee says there might not be any. Blue energy starts to envelop his sword. He raises it screaming and then attacks the centipede corpse, creating a giant shock wave. The corpse completely vanishes, and Hwee is puzzled, wondering where it just went. Meanwhile, a golden light appears, accompanied by a clock, and Hwee picks it up, wondering if it came from the centipede, as he has never heard of a monster dropping items. After he picks it up, the clock displays verification, and it begins discussing the initiation of an emergency procedure. The clock tells him to select a date, and he is confused about what it is yapping about. However, it keeps asking him if he would like to execute it as it fails to initiate protocol, and Hwee wonders what it needs a date for and what it is trying to do. The clock continues to annoy him. Hwee guesses all that it is and asks what it wants. It starts to warn as a giant shadow looms over him, and he turns, wondering if it is another centipede. Still, he realizes this is much stronger, as the energy is more overwhelming than that of the centipede. On the contrary, a giant hand on one of the skyscrapers, as the clock tells him he has a 0% chance of survival. Then, in a panic, he tells the clock to execute whatever protocol it's going on about. It bugs out trying to confirm his identity, says identity blank confirmed, and then initiates the emergency protocol. After that, Hwee checks his verification and sees the giant creature emerge from seemingly nowhere. The clock continues to malfunction with the verification and reports a failure to execute. The savior then checks his qualifications, saying that he is ineligible. Hwee looks up at the monster, making eye contact with it, wondering if running away is even possible from this. Meanwhile, the clock continues initiating the final sequence, confirming his eligibility. Then Hwee realizes that escaping from this will not be possible, and the clock says that the blank possibility has been verified. Moreover, the world is on the brink of destruction, and he is the sole survivor. Hwee yells, saying he does not care and to get him out of here. It confirms his desperate order, saying that it's moving him to a random time. He hears faint voices as they call out to him, and a woman yells, telling him to wake up. Hwee catches her hand before she slaps him, and then she apologizes, saying that he would not wake up regardless of what they did. Hwee wakes up, and there are many students. He is confused about what is happening here. The girl says that they assume he is a hunter because he has a sword. He is confused, saying that the whole world has been destroyed, and wonders where he is, curious as to why he is wearing the old Hunter Academy uniform. However, the girl who woke him up is named Yoo Hyuna, and then he glances around the room, spotting that the date is 2024. Hwee is shocked, as this is 20 years ago, and one of the students angrily calls out to him. His name is Hyunwook, and he tells his friend to let go of him. Hwee recognizes the name and looks over Hyunwook. Tell him that they do not have time for him to lock in. A roar cut him off. Hwee quickly jumps off the floor and heads over to the window. He looks down, wondering why of all the years, it would take him here as a black buffalo herd is seen below the window. Hwee says that only 5 of the 46 people in this building will leave. Hwee begins to wonder what is going on, and he starts to recall everything that has led up to this moment, including all the corpses, Jiun's death, Hong's demise, and a mysterious clock from the centipede. He wonders if he has returned to the past, and Hwee says that he published a paper about dungeon breaks as an undergrad, so he understands it well. He explains how, before the development of magic measurement devices, they were managed manually because a dungeon in the middle of the soul was well managed. But still, dungeons were unpredictable. One day, it was calm, and the next day, it could explode. Hence, Hwee explains how there was a guild that did not want to lose out on a rank dungeon, and falsely reported it as a B rank and ended up breaking. And there were a ton of casualties because the guild responsible for it lied about the rating. Moreover, the nearby high schoolers training to become hunters tried to protect the civilians. Still, since they were just students, they could not handle the dungeon break, so only 2 students survived, along with 3 civilians. This is the incident that he is currently a part of. Hwee realizes that he still has Jiun's sword in his hand, so he is time-traveled rather than regressing, and he is confident in escaping the situation alone, but does not want to leave the students behind. So, he asks them how long it has been since the dungeon broke, and they are confused. Then Hwee inquires them if they have not learned about dungeon breaks yet. Hyun replies that they came here to learn about them today, and he says they better start learning then and ask about the timing when it broke. One of the other girls says it was about 4 hours ago, and Hwi tells her he does not need a BS and only needs exact numbers. Then Hyun tells him that it has been 3 hours and 50 minutes and that they lost communication 2 hours ago. But they did hear that hunters were preparing to attack the boss. Hwi says to himself that Hong was a part of this attack team, and he blamed himself for only attacking the boss without noticing the students, so he will not let that happen again. Then Hyunwook angrily asks him not to be rude but wonders who Hwi is, and he asks how they are meant to trust somebody they do not even know, asking if he has a hunter's license and to show it to him. Hwi tells him that he lost it, but the real reason is that his license says 2031, so he cannot whip it out. He says now that he thinks about it, he has no form of identification here, so he cannot even go check out the dungeon if he manages to get out. Hwi sighed, saying he needed to prove he was a hunter, and then released his magic power to show them. Hyunwook states that he believes Hwi is a hunter, and some of the other civilians wonder if they can escape and then comment about how there is a student named Lee Seung-yeon. He is the youngest child of one of the world's biggest conglomerates and sits in the back. Hwi recognizes him, saying that he was highly treasured, and after his death, his family helped to maintain the school, establishing the Ability Management Agency and promoting Hong to the agency director. Hwi wonders what will happen if Lee Seung-yeon lives, and then he says that even if he doesn't have an identity, he will create a scenario where he has to save Lee from danger, becoming a hero so they can't criticize him. So Hwi tells them they will all be going to the city hall. Then an older man enters and yells, asking if he's out of his mind, saying how far City Hall is from here. Hwi gets annoyed and tells the man to listen, but he thinks to himself about how in the survivor testimony, this older man and how he didn't listen to the students. So he bluntly asked the man if he wanted to die. The older man panicked and asked if Hwi was threatening him. Hwi tells him to shut up, saying it'll be hard to save himself here, but he doesn't want to leave the kids behind, so he lends a hand. He explains to the students that if they leave alone, he will not stop them, but Hyun says she doesn't want to leave anyone behind. Hwi makes sure the older man hears this and tells him he should leave if he doesn't want to help. The older man awkwardly says that's not the case. Hwi then says he needs a map, asking if anybody knows the area well. A woman responds that she can draw it reasonably well, and then she draws a map and gives it to Jae. He highlights their current location and the dungeon, stating that it has been 2 hours since the raid started. The boss should be located near the mountain, and the boss is a minotaur. The students panic because a minotaur is an S-ranked monster, and the hills are close to them. Hwi tells him that the buffalo probably followed the boss to the mountain, so the only monster here would be the buffalo, which had separated from the herd. He then draws a circle on the map, asking if anybody knows what it is. Hyun replies that it is the outer part of the blockade, which is a defense line, so the monsters can't spread elsewhere. Hwi responds that's right, and since City Hall is the headquarters, they need to get there and will surely survive. Somebody suggests they wait for the boss to be defeated, saying they should wait because the dungeon break will end once they defeat the boss. Hwi shakes his head, saying that the miner is a dictator. If he says to gather, they gather. If he orders them to hunt, they hunt. But even if the boss disappears, the monsters won't, and they'll keep loiling around here and still be starving. After that, Hwi asked if there were more disagreements with the plan. Nobody says anything, and he says moving on, then asks if any mages can draw runes. Then, one of the students drew on Seung-yeon's forehead. Hwi tells them that monsters are sensitive to mana, so they ensure they draw the runes well. One girl says she's never heard of something like this before. Hwi understands since they are ruined from the future, after all. He explains that when it's on their foreheads, it hides mana connected to them, but does not hide mana that's been cast already. He ensures they all know how to activate the runes, saying they must fill their hand with mana and touch the rune. As soon as he leaves to activate them, Hwi adjusts Seung-yeon to weaken his mana. After that, he tells them that he will release his mana now and lure the monsters in a loop around the neighborhood. When he passes by again, they should start running, and then he will send them away and catch up to them. Hwi leaps out the window, saying it's time, and then lands on the floor by the buffalo. Then he starts running, saying he wishes he had a cape to be more like a matador. After a bit, the students and the teachers head out of the building, wondering who Hwi is, and then Choi Jin-woo states that he knows his name and says that, surely, he's one of the hunters who came to raid the dungeon since he knew about the boss. The girl says it's possible, as he is a knower, and then Hyun suggests he probably tripped while driving the boss away from the city. Lee adds that if he fainted while doing that, he would be weak. But they remind him that the boss is a minotaur, and Hyunwook says the only thing they can do right now is trust him, as he managed to lure the monsters away. Meanwhile, the older man calls out to all the students, saying that he's ready to run with them, and tells them to be careful, and Hyunwook adds that they will have to work hard to survive. As they talk, Choi informs them that he's on his way. Meanwhile, Hwee is hauling absolute cheeks as the buffalo is hot, and he swings his sword, doing what he assumes is concealing his mana. The buffalo all start slowly walking past him. Hyunwook realizes it's time to go, and they all begin running. As they start to leave, they recall his strategy. The martial arts hunters will take the lead while mages cast shields on both sides of them. If there are stragglers, they should block them while Hyunwook will take care of them, and the civilians just need to run for their lives. Hwee got Lee and Hyun to stand in the back as one of them is a healer and the other is a swordsman. Lee quickly feels breathing down his neck as he turns to see a buffalo whispering something sweet into his ear. After that, Buffalo's head gets kicked to the side, and Hwee flies in. Lee sees this, and Hwee turns, telling him to run, so Lee starts calling out to him. But Hwee tells him just to run away. Then, he begins to unleash his mana, drawing their aggro. It cuts to Hwee standing on a rooftop looking down at the buffalo. He wonders where they keep coming from. Hwee says it was a struggle getting out of there, and he didn't expect it to be so rough. He thinks it happened because he leaked his mana to gather the mobs, then slightly modified Lee's rune to put him in danger. Right before the buffalo attacked him, he made a sacrificial scene to be recognized as a hero. Ultimately, it worked perfectly, but now he doesn't know what to do. Hwee says if he's time traveled, the 10-year-old version of him is still here. However, he doesn't want it to end in the future, where he erases himself from changing history. He also mentions that the clock indicated the world is doomed, suggesting it may be related to the Bangyi-dong dungeon. After that, he realizes something, saying that his mana watch should still work as long as he supplies it with mana. So he starts typing away and seems relieved after seeing something on the watch. He sees the date and says he wondered why it was so specific. It turns out there was a reason for it. It's the clock telling him to change the fate of this world. Simultaneously, he hears a scream, which snaps him out of his daydreaming, and he looks over to see the Minotaur chasing some hunters down the street. The hunters complain about the number of mobs and say the boss must have summoned them. Hwee states that he should not intervene, as they initially defeated the boss anyway. Hong is here and sees him running in. Hong rushes towards them and says that they attack their subordinates without recognizing them, and it is better for them because the little ones are scattered, so they should focus on binding the boss first. Hwee looks at them and says that all of the legendary hunters have gathered here, so it's like a VIP seat. Meanwhile, he hears a girl's voice as she speaks at the enchantment table, shooting out a root that wraps around the boss's foot. Hwee recognizes it as the Archmage Kim came in, since her magic is unique. He says to himself that it was completely lost after her death, but then wonders how exactly she died, so he decides he should keep her alive, as she will be helpful in the future. Hwee says the dungeon shouldn't break until 20 years from now. Having a couple of ranks in the future wasn't enough for the centipede. Therefore, it would be beneficial if he could spare those destined to die, such as the students. So he must also find the dungeon where the person who lit the soul on fire is hiding. He seems excited about his plan, saying it will help him have a comfortable retirement. On the other side, Hong yells as he slices the leg off of the miner that Keeman has wrapped up. Meanwhile, Kim raises her staff into the air, casting another spell called Eliminating Vines. She slams her staff into the ground, and vines sprout out, wrapping around the Minotaur and tying it down. The Minotaur struggles to stay on his 2 feet and grabs onto a nearby building for support. Minotaur pushes himself off the building and swings his hammer at the hunters. On the other hand, Hwee decides that it's time for him to head out to City Hall. Then, one of the hunters tells Hong to cut the other leg off the boss. So Hong moves forward, and Kim continues her spell, keeping the boss unable to move as someone in the back holds on to the vines like a rope. On the contrary, Hong's spear stabbed into the boss's leg. It groans and falls over as the vines cannot keep it upright. Then Hwee sees a shadow falling over him. He looks up to see the boss going towards him first. Hong looks over and spots Hwee behind the Minotaur. One of the other hunters wonders if Hwee is a citizen, but Hong says he's wielding something. Hwee strikes the boss with his blue mana, lighting him on fire. Hong and Kim are surprised as the boss gets burned, turning into charcoal from behind it. Hwee tells everyone to continue what they are doing and pay him no mind. However, Hong and Kim wonder who he is, and then Hwee steps out from behind the boss, saying he's just a simple passerby. It cuts to him inside the interrogation room, and the officer says they took his weapon, but he's still suspicious as he has no form of identification. Hong says that's okay, and he has something to ask him. The officer leaves, telling him to be careful because they have no exact information about him. After that, Hong sits on the chair next to Jae, and while laughing, Hong tells him that he cut the camera off so they can talk. He says they should start with their names, and he introduces himself. Hwee says it's still surreal to see him so young. He wonders if Hong will save him a year from now and then adopt him 2 years. After Hwee tells him his name, Hong slides a piece of paper forward, asking if he knows what this is. Hwee is surprised, saying that the drawing covers the laboratory walls. Meanwhile, Hong could tell from his reaction that he understood it. He laughed, saying he just wanted to talk. Hong asked Hwee if he was nervous. Hwee is just confused, asking if he's that easy to read. Hong nods, saying that if things went according to plan, they would have met in a better situation and that he made it out safe, exactly like he heard from the blue mana fire and the sword. Hwee is confused, asking if he had a stroke. Hong then tells Hwee that he is the teacher that Kim is talking about. Hwee wonders if he's mistakenly thinking of him as a whistleblower from the lab. Hong tells him he was worried since they lost contact, but that he's already agreed to help them escape, so he has prepared an identity for himself on this side. As he begins to discuss it, Hwee says this is a perfect opportunity for him to establish his identity. Hong says that he will now call him Hwee. Hwee realizes that he's not lying since he is from the laboratory and an insider, so he can cover pretty well. Hong tells him that he will be working under him. Hwee asks if it's for surveillance, and Hong tells him he can think of it that way. Then, he stretches his hand out, saying he looks forward to working with him. Hwee thinks about how he worked under Hong again, saying he is not his foster father or the agency director, but rather a hunter now. It cuts to a week later, and Hwee is visibly annoyed. Hong asks him how his stay has been, asking if it has been okay. Hwee replies that there's no way it would be fine when he's been stuck here for a week. Hong laughs, saying he visits him daily, so surely it's fine. Hwee shows he has a glorified prison anklet on his foot, and Hong responds that he should try to see the positive side. He managed to escape, and now he's free. He said that there was a lot he wanted to do. Hwee says that he's the one who wants to do it and calls him Mr. Then, Hong tells him to call him Uncle, asks him if he remembers the 5 students he saved, and then tells him they are his students. Hong adds that he also heard that he was the one who baited the buffalo away, and they were able to dispatch them since they were grouped up easily. Otherwise, the damage could have been worse. Hwee says he's gotten it wrong but doesn't want to correct him. Hong says that all that matters is that the results are good and the kids are safe. Thanking him, Hwee starts feeling himself, saying it was nothing. Hong then says that he was thinking about something. Hwee realizes that his thinking is not good. Hong says that he knows the skill level of his students the best, so it would have been difficult for them to save themselves. But Hwee also saved them and the citizens, so everyone would have died if it had not been for him. Hong says all the kids are crying, begging him to find Jae, so he thinks about it. Hwee wonders why he is thinking much about it, and then Hong puts an employment form on the table, saying to teach them as it'll be too conspicuous if he follows him around the dungeons. But if he works as a teacher, it'll be a good cover. Hwee thinks about teaching the kids, saying that he understands how deep the bond is between a disciple and their master, and that there were several people, including Jian, who consider Hong their teacher. So it would be a good thing to create a strong connection with them, securing his future also to help save the world. Still, he doesn't want to reveal the thought right now. He asks Hong why he would teach the kids when he can't use mana, saying that Mr. would be a better candidate. Hong corrects him, saying Uncle Hwee accepts his mistake. Hong laughs, saying it would be easy to teach them how to fight, but the problem is magic. Then, he talks about the runes hiding mana and asks if he made them himself. Hwee replies that he should have kept quiet and asked if he meant to teach the kids about runes. Hong says it doesn't matter whether he made it, but he needs to teach the kids about them. Hwee thought he would teach them how to raid dungeons, but it would be too suspicious for an illegal awakened to know a lot about them. They then have an ace attorney court battle about how runes are not magic and how Hwee's not suited for teaching, but Hong says he knows he will fit right in. Hwee wonders if he should say he made the runes and get them patented, but decides that would be immoral. Then, he second-guesses himself, saying that spreading their knowledge can save more people. Hong starts laughing, saying he can tell he is deep in thought, but knows he will do it anyway. Hwee sighs, saying that it's for the kids. He looks down at the paper. Hong explained that he would be listed as a guild member since he was not doing raids, and there were no other incentives, so he just got paid his base monthly minimum wage salary. Hwee double-checks the paper while Hong laughs, saying he'll get 93% of that during his probationary period. Also, they don't have vacations since there are fewer than 5 people. But they still take off on public holidays, and the kids sometimes call them for training. Even on those days, it is up to him whether to go. Hwee curls up the paper, saying this is a scam. It jumps again to 2 days later, and they are in a van. Hong compliments the sword, saying it recognizes the owner, and asks if it's his. Hui replies, saying that it's somebody else's, and then Hong asks if he stole it, but Hui says if he did, he would have been burned. Hong says that makes sense, and Hui thinks that the sword used to hate him, but he understands that Jian gave it to him before dying. Hong asks Hui if he's mad that he didn't return it to him, and Hui responds that he wouldn't have been able to use it anyway because of his anklet. Then they banter a little bit. Hong smiles, saying that his school does not allow blades anyway, so he can't use them either. Also, his classes won't require weapons. Hui replies that he could also be blunt about not wanting a suspicious man to have a gun around his students. Hong asks why he's so pessimistic. Hui is looking out the window, saying he didn't deny it, then is completely taken aback as they enter the mountains. Hui wonders if he's going to be taken out back and executed. Hong tells him that this area is restricted from development due to nearby dungeons, which makes it perfect for raising hunters. So, the van comes to a stop that can only be described as a Minecraft starter houses. Hong says it's just a bit shoddy, and Hui looks at it there and states that shoddy is an overstatement. This is not good at all. Hong informs him that they will construct the building next year, which is temporary. Hui asks him if he has to stay here for a year. Hong's eyes look like a magical girl. He says every journey starts with the first step, and then he laughs at his joke about welcoming him to Hunter High School. They enter one of the rooms, and Hong tells everybody that Hui will teach them about runes. Hong says surely some of them recognize him, saying not to be mean to him. Suddenly, Hyunwook raises his hand, saying he remembers Hui using a sword rather than magic. Hong explained that he did not have to be a mage to use runes, and it was hard to get him to be a teacher, and this was what they agreed upon. Choi asks him if they will learn the mana hiding runes or if they will be new ones. Hong says that it will be the new ones and that he should greatly help them by paying attention to his lessons. Choi replies that it's not okay for him to teach this stuff. Hong asks if it's not okay that he won't be teaching here, inquiring if he doesn't want to learn about runes. Choi says he does since he finds them awesome. Lee has been going crazy when one of the students asks Hong if only mages can participate in the lesson. Hong says it is not the condition, but they can choose whether to take his lesson. Lee finally asks if Hui was hurt back then, saying he was worried about him. Hyun also added that she was concerned, and all the students there asked Hong about it, but he would not tell them anything. They were all concerned about him. Hui looks at them and says that these kids are so wholesome and different from how they will be in the future. Because the attitude of the world is selfish, he thinks about how, in the future, one of these kids will be stabbed in the back and left for dead inside a dungeon. Then he is shocked, wondering what is wrong with Park Seo-yeon, saying she was normal the last time he saw her. Moreover, it has only been 10 days since the incident, so how did she become the witch Park Seo-yeon that he knows? It flashes back to Choi telling Park to look at the rune he drew. She tells him that she doesn't think there should be a line this long. He says she's right. He corrects it, saying it is hard for him, but she makes it seem effortless. She smiles and says that her grandpa taught her when she was young, then gets him to draw Hyunwook and tells him she will draw Lee's. Choi responds that he can do it if she is tired, but she proudly tells him not to worry, as she has more experience being a mage, and they will need him to shield them. Later, it turns out that her grandfather used to say that arrogance ruins everything. After that, she thinks that the rune she drew on Lee did not work as her grandpa's words start to echo through her head, drowning out everybody's voices and leading to her drastic personality shift. It takes him back to his original timeline of 2044 inside the Ability Management Agency, where Park greets everybody, but they are low-key scared of her, so they walk away. Then, there is a fat Hyunwook asking her what she's doing. She greets him, too. Then he asks if she is here to meet Mr. Hong. She says this is not the case, and at the same time, Hui tries to get past Hyunwook, saying to get out of his way. He tells them he did not call them here to chat. Meanwhile, Hyunwook looks at him and asks who he is. Then Hui greets them, telling them he is an aide from the headquarters and is here to help with the dungeon raid. Hyunwook looks annoyed, asking where he is from. Hui also, in an annoyed tone, starts to lecture him about his job, but he says he isn't going to listen to all that. Hui bluntly tells him he works in the agency director's office, and then it takes him back to the present, where Hong tells Hui that he can stay in his house for now, but he lives here too, so he should not complain. Hui says he is glad he doesn't have to live in the Minecraft starter house. Hong says it is good and then leaves, telling him to have a good night. While sitting on the bed, he looks down at his ankle, saying that when he was young, he used to wonder why he had to learn these things. Then he takes it off, saying that Hong was right and needs to know a lot about technology. While going through his watch, he wonders what he should look at first, saying he could find some records about Kim. As he goes to type, he stops and starts to type in Park's name, saying he wants to know what changed her personality. Then, he is shocked when he sees a handout given to staff members about how to avoid her. The first rule is not to praise her magic as she hates it. Hwee finds that weird, and number 2 is that if she is not smiling, he runs since he is in danger. In case of emergency, mention the names Hyunwook or Jiyeon, and never mention her school to her. Hwee says that if that incident changed her personality, it would make sense, as there were no bodies left of her friends. But it doesn't make sense this time since he saved everybody, so he wonders what her problem is. He sighed, said whatever, and kept looking. Then, he saw an article by Hong about Ark's River of Promise, a research center. It jumps to the next day when Hwee is waiting outside, and Lee walks up to him, but Hwee is lost in thought. He is telling himself that he cannot believe they need to develop this place and build a new one here. He talks about maybe giving up and just living the next 20 years peacefully, abusing his future knowledge. Still, he recalls Jiyeon's words telling him to make it out alive. The entire time, Lee tried to talk to him but ignored him. He yelled to get his attention. Hwee gets a bit scared, and Lee asks what he's thinking about so hard. Hwee calls out to him, and Lee is surprised that he remembers his name. Then, he asks him where his sword is, saying his aunt is curious about it. Hwee asks about his aunt, and he humbly brags about his aunt, saying she is a famous hunter. Hwee thinks about it, saying that it must be the master of the Daeson Guild, Lee Seon. She is a mighty hunter who cares about Lee a lot in his timeline so he can secure his future. Hong calls out to him, saying to come here, ruining Hwee's plan. Hwee sighed, saying okay, and then he headed inside the building, asking Hong what he needed. Hong tells him that he is making a classroom for him. Hwee is a bit dejected, asking if he means this room, and Hong says it's just a storage room, so he'll clean it up later. Hwee sighed, asking if he could do something about Park, and Hong asked what he meant. Hwee explained to Hong that Park was very different from when he first encountered her at school. Hong responds that her style has certainly changed, then proudly declares that every hunter hits a wall, which might be one Park encounters. Hwee realizes that this guy is mentally cooked. Hwee mutters that Hong is hopeless and remains too optimistic about everything. Hwee comments that Hong will never be able to understand normal people's concerns. Later in the day, Hwee explains that modern dungeon strategies are divided into before and after the revaluation of runes. Hwee states that runes were long neglected due to several flaws, but an archmage in France revealed the mana hiding rune. Just like when the Fire Nation attacked, and everything changed. Despite the flaws, all mages learned this rune, and by 2040, they started making mana equipment like pens and his watch. However, at this point, runes remain exclusive to mages. As Hwee teaches, he gets distracted upon noticing Hong and some other students in the back. Hwee wonders why they are here when they can't even use runes in the first place. Hwee informs Choi and Park that since they have been practicing extensively, he wants to assess their levels today. When Jin Woo is drawing on the paper, Hwee goes to him and asks Jin Woo if he understands why runes weren't used in the past. Jin Woo responds that it's because using magic is more convenient. Hwee inquires why that is, and Jin Woo's brain melts. Hwee realizes that must have been too difficult a question for a student. He asks Park, but she's too busy eating her pencil. Hwee starts to think that maybe she's just possessed since nobody else thinks she's weird. When Hwee tries to ask her, she starts to speak, and he gets scared because she appears incredibly creepy. However, she answers him, stating that runes get easily erased. Hwee tells her that is correct, and it's especially easy for them to get erased inside dungeons. Hwee then asks how they compensate for that. Hwee declares he will show them and starts drawing a rune on the board. A lot goes into it, and Choi and Park watch intently. After Hwee finishes drawing the enchantment table rune, they are surprised, asking how they are meant to memorize this. Hwee tells them that the combination of runes makes it hard to erase, so if the first rune they draw is even slightly wrong, they should always be precise. Park raises her hand, asking why Hwee didn't teach them that back at school when he first met them. Hwee starts to realize what her problem is. Park mentions that she just drew the wrong runes in the first place. Hwee now understands that her personality change is due to the runes on Lee being altered. Hwee reflects that being a hunter means battling with himself whether he wins or loses. It is his battle. Besides, even in that terrible state after surviving the Myeongdong incident, Park says that Hyun became an archmage. He could easily ignore this. She shows Hwee again that she drew the new rune, asking if she did it correctly. However, Hwee does not answer since he remains lost in thought. Park starts to think that Hwee isn't answering because she was wrong, then starts to cry, thinking she is a failure, and messes it up again. Hwee loudly claps his hands together to snap her out of it, declaring it might not be his fault, but as an adult and a teacher, it is his responsibility. Hui sits eating, mentioning that he shouldn't have followed Hong because now he's stuck eating convenience store food inside one of the starter houses. Hong remarks that Hui is knowledgeable about runes, asking if Hui made them himself. Hui asks if they have to discuss this even while they eat, then tells Hong that somebody he knows made it. Hong comments it's crazy that Hui knows so much about runes when he is not a mage. Hui eats his food, thinking Hong dropped his suspicions, but they return. Hui then adds a backstory because it appears he dies and knows little about the inner workings of the ARC Research Center. Hui puts on an Oscar-worthy performance, declaring it's a waste to let such knowledge disappear, so he learned it just in case. Hong buys it, stating that he brought up something useless and forgot what he mentioned. Hui then asks Hong how he is teaching Park and Jinwoo. He responds by saying he gives them whatever magic books he can find. Hong then explains that she has been learning magic since she was a child, but Jinwoo is the problem as he has difficulty mastering it. Then, he insinuates that Hui should teach them. Hui reminds him that he is not a mage. He clarified that he was making sure. Hui replies that he may not know magic, but will teach them all the runes he knows. Hong starts to spit out his food in disbelief. Hui asks why Hong is so surprised, explaining that he will have to publicize the runes he knows anyway. Hong asks if that's okay, since the runes were made inside ARC. Hui confirms it to ensure that Hong is the publisher. That's his only condition. Hong appears surprised, and Hui asks if Hong expected him to ask for gold or something else. Hong clarified that he only expected the students to learn 1 or 2 runes. Hui admits at first that he just wanted to teach them a couple and call it a day, but seeing how weak they are, it's obvious they won't last long. Hong inquires if it's okay with the mage who made the runes for Hui to teach it to others. Hui responds that he would be happy if his work saved a single life. As the archmage from France created the mana hiding runes, with saving people being his only goal, he gave away all of his work for free, so he would not care if others took credit. Hui adds another condition, mentioning that he knows a place full of needy children. Since it is only 2024, Hui is trying to get Hong to head to the research center and save the younger Hui a year early. The next day, Hong teaches some students outside and knocks Hyunwook down. Hyunwook stands back up while Lee leaps at Hong from behind. Hong easily blocks the attack and counters, hitting them both. This knocks them down, and Hong laughs, calling them cute and telling them to try again. Hui watches them, commenting that brutes have no elegance compared to his mages. It's night and day. However, Hui spoke too soon as Jinwoo started pulling out his hair out of frustration. Hui chalks it up to Jinwoo just being at that age. Park announces she is drawing it the way Hui told her. Hui asks if he can take a look, but she refuses and states she'll show him later. He tries to tell her his role is to help them get better, but again, she insists later. Hui tries to explain that if she develops a bad habit, it would be better to fix it now, but he decides to encourage her instead. Hui wonders what he used to do in the past and then recalls him and Jian bullying other hunters for their stupid ideas. Hui realizes he can't do this to the students. He then observes Hong encouraging on his side and starts to think about his timeline. When Hong saw Hui's report card for the first time, he noticed he wasn't happy with it and asked about it. Hui told Hong he wanted to be in first place rather than second. Hong told him that even if he isn't first, it does not matter. Hui tried telling Hong that it was because he wanted to attend college. He laughed, declaring that it would work out if he did his best. The flashback ends, and Hui tells Park that he gets it, and she can show it when she's ready. Hui smiles kindly at her, stating she has enough talent to become an archmage and more, and that they're usually stubborn and hate being distracted. Park doesn't reply to Hui's comments and starts to wonder why the atmosphere is so tense. Then she begins to cry and apologizes to him. She starts wiping away her tears and tries to hand Hui her paper. Hui tells her that she can do it when she wants, but Park just continues handing him the paper. He tells her to take her time, but while crying, Park apologizes, declaring that she was wrong. Hui is taken aback, wondering what he did wrong. Then Hong tells them that classes are over, to clean up, and to go home. Jinwoo thanked Jae, and then Park walked off. Hui mentions that he's sure Park didn't cry because she felt touched by his speech. He sighed long, admitting he couldn't understand where he had gone wrong. Lee gets put into a car, and the other students tell Hong they will see him the next day. Hong waves, telling them all to have a safe trip. Hui asks if their houses are nearby, but he tells Hui they have a nearby dorm. As they head home, they talk about how the cases of surprise adoption have been on the rise recently, and that the targets are usually awakened children. There's not even a ransom note. The witnesses don't even care enough to help so that it can happen in broad daylight. Hong asks Hui if the kids he mentioned needing help are part of an ARC facility. He responds maybe, but there's no way he thinks that all of the kids are kidnapped. He explains to Hong that there are orphanages among the places that ARC manages. Hui can count the ones he knows on one hand, but he is sure there are more. Hui's condition is that Hong needs to save all of those children and let Hui in on the operation. He tells Hui that he's already made concessions for him, but Hui tells him to calm down, asking if he plans to take the children away and be done with it. Hong tells Hui that the current team has enough members. Hui insists, declaring that he knows how to break the security easily. Then he tries to cook up a plan and puts on another Oscar-worthy performance, stating that he is someone Hui needs to find and wondering if that child is safe. Hong eats up Hui's performance, giving him a look of empathy. He then agrees, mentioning that they should have a guide, but it will take some time for them to start since Hong has to gather some people. Hui asks if they will be trustworthy, and then he laughs, declaring that he doesn't mess around regarding saving children. Hui looks at the sky the next day, commenting that it's clear. Hui observes that Park is gloomy like usual, and that the atmosphere is dark. Lee comes in and brightens up the. Hui mentions that he is thankful for Lee, but he appears lost. Lee introduces a woman named Sunjin to Jae, who remarks that it's weird that they aren't in class right now. Lee responds that they are funny and do not even take lunch breaks. Hui tells Lee that they have been reducing their breaks independently. Lee comments that it must be because they are mages since he can't sit still due to his Subway Surfer brain. Lee then asks Hui where his sword is, and Hui responds that Hong told him not to carry it around. Lee mentions he wanted to see it up close, and Hui thinks that if there is a Youngwoo Hui, here there is a second Yujian sword. So if two swords with that performance exist, even though it's not his primary weapon, it's pretty tempting. A fancy car approaches the school, and a woman steps out. Hui is surprised as the woman talks to Hong, and then Hui realizes that it is Keeman, the Archmage. Hui declares that this hasn't happened before, and is a little scary. According to her file, Keeman died 3 years later while fighting the Siren. Keeman was offered a teaching position, but she told Hong she could only do elemental magic as her magic required high compatibility. Also, the students don't have the aptitude for it. Hong is surprised that she can tell from just looking. Keeman tells Hong that she's just built like that. Keeman looks at Park, commenting that since she is Najeong's granddaughter, she probably already has the basics down. Hong confirms it but mentions she has no experience. Keeman asks if this is why Hong called her here and why he mentioned it was related to ARC. Hong tells her that it's not entirely unrelated, pointing at Jae. Keeman finally realizes who Hui is, stating he's the one from the rooftop. Hui greets her, introducing himself as the student's magic teacher. Keeman mentions that she saw him carrying a sword and asked if he was a mage. Hong clarifies that Hui is not, but he knows something better. Keeman asks if Hong is talking about unique magic, and Hong responds no. Hui smiles, explaining that he is teaching these students about runes, but he is glad to have the opportunity to meet her like this. Keeman starts to mention that Hui nervously Hong are not mages, so they might not be aware. Hui cuts her off, declaring that she probably thinks runes are useless, but Keeman tells him she wouldn't go that far. Hui states that it will be faster to show her. Outside, Hui teaches the students how to fix their runes. Hui tells Park that her completion rate is getting higher, but she needs to be more confident in her lines. Keeman looks at one of the runes, commenting that this is complicated. Hui ignores her, telling the students to activate their runes. Jin Woo lies on the ground, putting mana into the rune as a giant flame pillar emerges from his paper. Keeman appears surprised, and then, from Park's rune, rain begins to pour down, wiping out the flame. Keeman is completely taken aback, declaring she does not feel mana and asking how he did this. Hui congratulated the students, stating that not even an archmage could detect their mana. Hui shows her the mana hiding rune, and Keeman admits this is her first time seeing this. Keeman asks if the overlapping lines have different functions, commenting that it's crazy to think it would work. Hong tells Keeman that Hui learned it from a mage he knows. Keeman cuts Hong off, telling Hong to accept her as a new student here so that she can also learn this rune. Keeman tells Hong that she doesn't need a salary or anything. She wants to take the class. Hong tells her that he can do that. Keeman looks at Jae, suggesting he could draw the runes for her. Hong gives Hui the thumbs up, thanking him. Then Keeman smiles cheerfully, telling Hui she will be in his care. Hui also smiles cheerfully, declaring that he can't wait, and this is exciting. A few days later, a group of people gathers outside one of the laboratories for ARC. Hui asks who these people are, and Hong tells Hui that they are trustworthy and thorough. Hong reminds everyone that the goal is to save the children, and they will block the escape route. If they gain information, that will be good, too. They could even catch a higher up. Once they are done, they will send the signal and cause chaos. Hwee mentions that he is just using them at this point. Hong tells Hwee that this is just improvisation. One of the men tells Hong that his skill hasn't detected anything, and there are no life forms besides bugs, nor are there security cameras. Hwee asks if the basement is empty, and the man confirms yes. Hwee appears confused, declaring that this should not be possible. Then Hwee stands up, announcing they should go inside. They try to tell Hwee to wait, but Hwee slices the lock off the door with his sword and starts walking in. Hwee tells Hong that something is wrong and that they should be unable to move easily because of the children. Hong asks why that would slow them down. Hwee tells Hong they are experiments, so they need a specific environment. Hwee heads over to a keypad on the wall and starts inputting the code to enter the elevator. The door opens, and Hong comments that if Hwee had known the code, he could have told them this in advance. Hwee tells Hong that he wants to have some hidden cards as well. Hong observes that it goes up to the 5th floor, commenting that it is pretty high. Hwee tells Hong it's the opposite, and they will go to the basement. The elevator door starts to creak open as nothing is slowly left inside. They appear confused, declaring that there is no way Ark knew they were coming. Hwee warns them not to use magic as they have initiated an emergency protocol. Hwee explicitly mentions that it is called the Pompeii Project, and runes are hidden all around and respond to magic. If it detects magic, it will explode. Kemen is fascinated by the fact that one can do all this with runes. Hwee promises he will teach her later. As they head down the corridor, Hwee comments that there isn't even dust, so it looks like they left not too long ago. Hwee wonders what changed for Ark to leave in the middle of the night. They get to one of the doors, realizing that it's locked. Hwee tells them this is the leading research lab. The most crucial research material should be there if they go inside. However, they discover the children's area empty. Hong and Kemen start feeling gut-wrenching after realizing why so many kids' toys are around. Hong asks Hwee if anything is stopping him from destroying the facility. Hwee responds that this is not true, and Hong declares it is good and then hits the glass beside them. The glass window starts to shatter. Hwee comments that whether it's from the inside or the outside, this place is as spectacular as ever. Hwee has flashbacks to the research center when he was younger. His friend was writing something, and Hwee asked what it was. The friend mentioned that it was a diary entry and then told him that explaining evidence about his dad being a lawyer is essential. Hwee tells the kid to write that the lab chief hit them. The kid responds that he doesn't, though. Hwee insists that the chief sometimes hits the lab worker, so it is not a lie if he writes it like this. The kid writes, "The lab chief keeps hitting people," and the flashback ends. Miseon pops her gum, declaring that this is a waste of time. Hwee observes that she looks the same as in the future. Hong responds that it isn't a waste of time, as it's still a research center. She retorts that she wouldn't have called it a waste of time if any data were left. But this is not what he promised her. One of her guild members runs up, announcing that he has removed all the explosives. She appreciates him, then comments that since Hong is talking to her in the most indirect way possible, he must be hiding something from her. He smiles, and she asks what it is. Hong glances over at Jae, and then she sighs. She tells her members to leave so she can talk privately with Hong and find something useful. He asks one of his workers if she is done organizing, which might be charming. Miseon mentions that Hong told her there was nothing left behind. He clarified that the lab workers had left nothing, handed her a piece of paper, and explained that a kid had left it behind. To be precise, it is Hwee's younger brother. She looks interested and then starts reading it. It starts to mention how the dungeon in Myeongdong was a failure. She doesn't understand what that has to do with him. She gets chills, wondering what this is about. Then, it mentions how the chief mentioned a dungeon inside the Songpa district and that they must move. It cuts to 2 days later, and Soonjin sits there blankly. Hwee stares at her, asking if she is watching the ants. She responds no, and he asks what she is looking at. Soonjin responds that it is nothing. He looks down at her, commenting that her name is hard to forget, but he doesn't remember her, so that she might have died early or quit. Hwee asks why Soonjin is alone rather than helping Lee. She explains that it's the plan and that they can't win against Hyunwook, even if they team up against him. He agrees that's true, as the latter shows much potential even when compared to Park. Then Hwee adds that the rest of them are about average. She asks if he can stop watching them. Hwee understands something, asking her whose idea it was. Soonjin responds that Lee came up with it. She watches Lee and Hyunwook, then grabs her sword and leaps at him from behind, swinging at him. The latter matrices her attack, but gets hit in the stomach by Lee. He manages not to fall over. Soonjin declares it is a shame, and Hyunwook complains that it is cheating. Lee mentions that he should have paid more attention, and the teacher told him to stay vigilant. The former appears annoyed, declaring this is unbelievable. Lee tells him to team up with somebody else if he's angry. A car pulls up to school, but Kimin is already there, so Hwee wonders who it is as Miseon emerges from the vehicle. She asks Lee how he is doing, calling him a kid. He pouts, mentioning he told her not to call him that publicly. Then she compliments Soonjin, and the latter turns into a completely different person after receiving the compliment. Hwee appears confused, and then she sighs, commenting that it's good she left them with Hong and wishes their youngest would take after them. Then she tells Hyunwook to join her guild and that she will treat him as well as a real older sister. Lee gets annoyed and calls her an old lady. Then she flames him for being a loser. Miseon starts to tell embarrassing stories about Lee and how he got rejected, and they continue bantering for a bit, taking shots at one another. Hwee observes that he heard that she adored her nephew, and he thought they would be more heartwarming, but they are pretty ordinary, which shows that they are close to one another. Hong steps out, telling everybody that Miseon brought food, so they should eat. Then he calls for Hwee and Kimin to come here. She tells them that she bought the Songpa Bangi Dong dungeon, but she thinks that the government might try to take over it due to the other dungeon incident. Thanks to that, other guilds hesitated to bid, so she did not have to pay much for it, and the assumed rank of the dungeon lowered as well. Hong asks about the official evaluation, and she explains that because of the Myeongdong dungeon break from before, the rank evaluation was pushed off. He declares they should try to get into the Bangidong dungeon as soon as possible, then asks Hwee if he knows his brother's journal entry about their failure. Hwee responds no, as his heart starts to sink since he did not write that diary entry in his previous timeline. Hwee opens a marker the next day, announcing it's time to move on since they must be used to the mana hiding and support runes. Kimin raises her hand, and he asks what her question is. Miseon watches from behind, thinking he's handsome, but she cannot trust him. She reflects that both her youngest and Hong lack awareness. Kimin asks how many runes Hwee knows. He inquires why she is curious. She responds it's only natural for his students to be curious about their master's skill. Hwee laughs, telling her not to mention something so scary. He's neither a mage nor signed a contract, so don't call him master. Miseon pops her bubble gum, declaring that he is suspicious no matter how she looks at it. Everybody turns and looks at her, and she quickly covers her mouth, embarrassed, apologizing, and explaining it's just a bad habit. Hwee continues his lesson, announcing that he will teach them a shadow rune. He draws it, then smiles, asking if that's easy. They respond that he's the nerd emoji in human form. Kimin asks what it does, and he tells her to draw it. She asks why he doesn't know them, and Hwee responds that there's no fun in that. Then he tells them to draw it. They all start trying to draw the rune, and Hwee walks around. He tells Jinwoo it's much easier than the mana hiding rune, and the latter agrees. Hwee starts lecturing him, declaring that it's a simple rune, so he should know how to draw it very quickly, as there are still more runes for him to learn, so he doesn't have the luxury of practicing all day. Jinwoo seems happy about the advice. Hwee then walks over to Park and comments that she did a good job drawing it, but tells her to activate the rune. She starts to do it, and Miseon appears surprised, mentioning that her vision is blurred as the former starts to fade out. Hwee explains how the rune melds the caster with the shadows, so it's not that good when it's bright, but when it gets dark, the effect is incredible. He rips the paper, and she fades back to normal. Hwee asks her how she thinks she can utilize the rune. Park responds that she does not know and then starts to sulk. He declares there's nothing wrong with not knowing, and he does not mean to pressure her. She starts to break down, and Hwee turns into a wacky, inflatable armed man, proclaiming that it's okay. Miseon asks about the mana hiding rune. He explains it's just as the name implies, it just hides mana. Then Hwee asks if she hasn't heard from Lee about how it saved the students in the Myeongdong incident. She responds that she hasn't heard anything about runes from him. When she asked, everybody kept changing the subject, and she was worried that he had developed some PTSD. Hong looks at Miseon as if he has no idea what she's talking about. She completely misunderstands and then asks if he has silenced Lee, telling him to inform her what happened. It jumps to Hong explaining to Hwee that Kimin's family has had archmages with the same attribute for 3 generations. It's rare, even on an international level. He mentions that even though they lack experience, the family's reputation is more than sufficient. Hong asks Hwee if he understands what the former means. He responds he has no idea. The former asks again if Hwee doesn't know why he is telling him. Hwee declares that he has no clue. Hong explains to him that his rune is something that an archmage has vouched for, which means that other mages and people from Arc might try to pursue him. Hwee sips his tea, suggesting that he just announced that Keeman was the one who discovered it and that he'll be safe. Hong barks at him, declaring that he should not live like that and that his achievement and the mage made it. Then he asks if Hui thought Hong silenced the students, and the former asks if he didn't. Hong clarifies that he hasn't. They must have just not mentioned anything since they knew the value of the rune. Hong tells Hui not to worry as he will make sure that his name will be in the history books. The latter starts developing a guilty conscience, reflecting that he's taking away so many achievements. Hui is taking away the French Archmage's Mana hiding rune, Park's shadow rune, and the others he will claim. He starts to debate the massive amount of royalties that other people have from them. Hui wonders how much money he would truly be taking away. Hong observes that he is deep in thought, but after a bit, Hui tells him that he's looking forward to it. The former mentions he's unsure what the latter thought about it, but it seems reasonable. Then Hong suggests they should go out for a meal. Mision's guild starts setting up vacation stuff outside the Minecraft starter house. He steps outside, asking what is happening, commenting that it's a different area now. She asks if their meeting is finished. Hong barks at her, declaring that this is the school's holy ground. She tells him that he can get reported for child abuse because of how barren this area is, and that being in this place will be bad for Sunjin. Sunjin inquired about Hui's skincare routine, turning to examine him before questioning his identity once again. She admired their banner while asking one of her guilders whether that constituted the final box. The guild member confirmed it was, prompting her to instruct him to organize everything properly. Hui wondered where she had acquired all her supplies from, and Sunjin explained that she had installed a subspace. She mentioned that while it wasn't public yet, she utilized it first since her company had developed the technology anyway. The former offered to assist him with anything he might need, but Hui assured her that everything would be fine since he was already using one that her guild had developed in the future. She stretched her hand out, declaring that they hadn't formally introduced themselves yet. Sunjin revealed her identity and explained how she had been helping Hong with numerous tasks. She smiled before whispering that she planned on helping Hui as well. He appeared pleased and responded that he looked forward to working with her. Later, Hui could be found drawing runes in a notebook when Lee entered, questioning whether his primary weapon was a staff. The former denied this, beginning to mention that he used spears, but realized such information would appear suspicious, so instead, he asked why both Lee and Sunjin had requested him to teach them. Hui pointed out that they both had Hong to instruct them, questioning why they needed his guidance. Lee explained that the principal used a spear and had told them to learn from Hui since the former would be away from school. This announcement annoyed the latter considerably. He approached Hong to discuss the matter and acknowledged that he had intended to inform Hui about the situation. The former reasoned that since more teachers were available, he didn't need to remain at the school constantly. Hui argued that if Hong planned to be absent, he should bring more employees. The latter countered that they couldn't hire anyone officially since they didn't want the runes to leak to the public. Hui glared while stating that Mision's hunters were trustworthy, but Hong replied that she wouldn't surrender her hunters, plus there were still outsiders among her group. Hui challenged Hong about what made him so qualified for this responsibility. The latter declared that he could see it in Hui's eyes, then began praising him by saying that the eyes served as windows to the soul. Hui pondered how Hong had become the strongest in the world. He clarified that he wasn't allowing the students to use mana, suggesting Hui should correct their postures or engage them in combat training, as he was sure they would learn from being defeated as well. Hong laughed while announcing he would inform the students, predicting they would probably start sneaking up on Hui for his head. The former questioned what Hong meant by this, and the latter revealed that he had told the students he would give them something in return for bringing him Hui's head. Both men engaged in an awkward stare-down before Hui inquired about Haiyun. Hong explained that he had left her to supervise Keeman since mages shared similarities with healers. He announced his departure, stating he was heading to the Songpa dungeon. Hui requested to accompany him, but Hong gave him a superhero-like stare, warning that it might prove too dangerous and that he should enter first to ensure nothing appeared suspicious. Hong placed his hand on Hui's shoulder, promising to return soon and asking him to take care of the students. The latter sighed and urged him to be quick about his mission. The following morning revealed that Mission had significantly improved the place's appearance, even bringing a coffee truck. Hui wondered when it had arrived, then cleared his throat to address all the students with one important reminder: the one who survives becomes the strongest. Lee commented that he didn't sound particularly cool saying something like that. Hui adopted a serious expression while asking whether the former had ever been inside a dungeon. All the students noticed the gravity on his face, and one of them raised his hand, confirming that he had experience. His name was Seo Hanseong, whom they would call Hanseong. Hwee inquired about his experience, and the latter appeared somewhat frightened as he responded that it was different. That was all he could say about it. Hwee informed them that theories suggested dungeons existed in different dimensions. He recalled Jiun delivering a speech about how no humans existed in dungeons, so one must abandon being human to survive. Hwee shared these words with the students but paraphrased them somewhat, similar to how one might use the internet. He announced that the principal had instructed them to stop sparring with each other, and the students acknowledged this with affirmative responses. Hwee declared that he would teach them similarly to how Hong instructed, but warned that he wouldn't be as lenient. He raised his sword, proclaiming that he would awaken their instincts and not kill them, so they should try their best. Within the Banggi-dong district, located inside Seoul, Hong and Miseon walked down the street. They had mentioned plans to reassess all the dungeons soon. She suggested they should have completed this task sooner, then complained about the foreign hunters since all they had accomplished was criticizing the Korean ranking system of dungeons. Hong asked for her opinion, catching her slightly off guard. She responded that she didn't need to lie about dungeon ranks to make money. He jokingly remarked that he must have underestimated her, and she naturally agreed, though she would apologize later. Miseon pulled out a recorder and examined the portal, documenting the day they entered and identifying who was going inside before they headed through. They discovered a grassy field on the other side, and she appeared somewhat unsettled. She asked Hong to say something, and he admitted he felt embarrassed, noting that even D-rank dungeons weren't this relaxed. The former requested information about the monsters inhabiting the area. One of the guild members explained they were insect types, but there weren't many of them. He then described how they were herbivores. Hong remarked that this was rare. The man continued, explaining that they had observed the insects eating leaves while paying no attention to the meat and blood they had brought with them. While the creatures showed curiosity about humans, they never attacked. Their bodily liquids were also harmless and not acidic, and the dungeon's core had no monsters surrounding it. Hong acknowledged their thoroughness, then looked down while contemplating the dungeon and its peaceful nature. He killed one of the bugs, wondering why Ark had paid so much attention to this location. Miseon screamed, and he asked whether she disliked bugs. She confessed that anything with more than 2 legs frightened her. He then raised one of the bugs toward her face, causing her to collapse on the spot from a heart attack. Hong laughed at her dramatic reaction before they continued onward. He noticed the bugs behaving strangely, telling everyone to wait as he detected a foul smell. Hong then announced that there was a Discord moderator ahead. Miseon appeared shocked as he explained there was a reason the insects hadn't reacted to the meat. They only enjoyed eating rotten flesh as they munched on a decomposing corpse. The scene flashed forward to 2044 in Hwee's previous timeline, where Jiun informed him about a dungeon in the Songdo district. He sighed, questioning why she did this many times, then attempted to joke around with her. She insisted she wasn't kidding and needed to clear the dungeon. Hwee stood up, declaring that he wasn't joking, before shoving her out of the room, stating he needed to work. She accused him of physical abuse as he pushed her toward the door, then tried explaining that she needed to raid the dungeon, but he closed it on her face. Hwee jolted awake, sitting up and declaring it was a dream. He wondered why someone who had never listened to him had waited for permission. Thinking about it annoyed him, so he decided to get to work. The students could be heard asking whether he could tell Hong to hurry up. Hwee replied that he didn't have his number, so he wasn't sure what the latter had been doing for the past 4 days. However, if they had the energy to talk, they must be rested, and the scene revealed that they were all exhausted on the floor. Sunjin apologized, stating they weren't sure what they had done but were sorry. She declared that she had deluded herself into thinking she could hit him. This annoyed Jae, who proclaimed they were exhausting and doubted they had acted the same way with the principal. One of the students informed him that Hong had never pushed them this hard. Then Hyun asked whether they wanted water, and they perceived her as an angel. They all began gasping desperately while commenting that she acted very healer-like. Hyun mentioned feeling bad for resting alone when a taxi began pulling up. The taxi driver barked at the girl in the back, stating he had only brought her there since she was a student, questioning what business she had out there in the first place. She stepped out of the car, and the former expressed surprise, asking why she was there. A familiar-looking face appeared. The little girl told her that she had come because she wanted to see her and had left school early. Hyun apologized to Jae, explaining that this was her younger sister, then instructed the latter to greet him properly. The little girl bowed, saying it was nice to meet him and that he had saved her sister's life. Hwee declared that now he understood why he had experienced that dream, as the girl was none other than Seong-jian. He confessed he had a bad feeling about this, finding it weird to observe her being respectful to him along with her excessive smiling. Hwee had never even known she had a sister. Hwee asked why she had come there, and she confirmed it was. Jian then explained that she was wondering if he would accompany them to the district office since they needed someone who was C rank or higher. He inquired whether she was a hunter, and the former proudly announced that she had awakened. Hyun expressed surprise, asking when this had occurred. Her sister revealed it had happened that day during P class. The former questioned whether that was why the teachers had let her out, and Jian confirmed they had told her to get registered. Hyun then asked Hwee how it had felt when he first awakened. He was surprised that she wasn't calling him derogatory names, speculating that perhaps Hong's death was what had made Hyunwook gain weight in the first place. One of the students informed her that she would be fined if she didn't register within a week. Hyun mentioned that she had registered much later than Seong when awakening. The girl explained that she had gone with the principal, and he must have taken care of it. She added that Hanseong had stated that Hong had also taken care of his registration. Hanseong confirmed that Hong had helped with suing the guild and had gotten him compensated. Hwee instructed Keeman to register with Jiyeon, but the former mentioned she was S rank. He questioned whether she was bragging, and she explained that it would become troublesome if her name appeared on the list since the press loved scandals. She asked Hwee why he couldn't handle it himself. He admitted that he couldn't, and when she asked why not, he explained that he was broke and phoneless. Keeman gave him a pitying stare before pointing out that Jiyeon had already chosen him, so he should accompany her. The latter mentioned that she had been thinking about something and asked him to take her in as a disciple. Hwee began feeling panicked, questioning whether she was addressing him. Full of hope, her eyes confirmed she was, declaring she wanted to be his disciple. He calmed himself down while considering the situation. She was a genius and loyal, so there were plenty of ways she would prove helpful. Hwee just needed to overcome this discomfort since it was a mental issue. He quickly told her no, shocking her, who asked why not. He explained that he wasn't a mage and couldn't take in a disciple. Jiyeon pointed out that he taught everybody else, but Hwee instructed her to come after she graduated middle school. She pouted while stating she had read online that the golden time was within a month of awakening. Jiyeon kept talking, and he turned to ask whether anybody else believed this nonsense. Both Keeman and Hyun denied it. One of the other students mentioned that she had handed Hwee a flyer she had received that morning. Like before, the content was extensive and not worth reading in full. The girl explained that she had only kept it because no trash cans were available. He showed the flyer to her, declaring that it was a scam and she should wait for Hong to return. Hwee then clapped, announcing that everyone had rested enough, and told her she could stay and watch beside her sister. Soonjin commented that she wouldn't enroll after witnessing how the classes operated. He replied that it would interest her more since it was enjoyable. Lee naturally agreed that he found it fun, and then they continued to practice while their screams of joy could be heard. That evening, Hong was informed about Jiyeon at a restaurant. He acknowledged knowing who she was and felt bad since both her and Hyun lived independently. Keeman remarked that the former was gutsy for asking Hwee to be her disciple. She laughed while observing that Jiyeon hadn't given up even after witnessing how he trained the students, adding that she had never seen Hwee so flustered. Hong laughed, wishing he had not missed the scene. Hwee reached into his pocket, telling them to examine something, but the former announced he had something to show him first. Hong displayed the rotting corpse inside the Songpa dungeon, asking Hwee whether he recognized this person. The latter stated he couldn't, and Hong found this surprising, revealing that it was Kim, the one who had sacrificed himself to let Hwee escape from Ark. A chill ran down his spine as the former expressed surprise that he didn't recognize Kim, then questioned who he was. The waitress approached, placing their food on the table and breaking the awkward silence. Hong asked Hwee whether there was anything he wanted to say, and the latter replied that they should stop this discussion. Hong declared that he was just getting started. Hwee sighed while pointing out that Kim was a girl, so he didn't understand why the former was showing him some random guy's body. He had conducted research before borrowing this identity since he hadn't wanted to leave it up to luck. The scene showed him on his watch, searching for obituaries. Since Hong was older, he referred to everybody by their last names. One of them was named Kim and was abroad, while another had died in a dungeon break. The previous was a police officer with whom he had worked on multiple cases. Her records had disappeared due to her being undercover. Hwee thought it was somewhat sad how she had died, experiencing a con man flashback. He then asked Hong why he was showing him this guy, questioning whether the latter had surely not killed him to test Jay. Hong denied this, explaining that he had found him inside the dungeon. Even though it was being guarded around the clock, they had still discovered him inside. He then showed Hwee a rune and asked whether he knew about it. Hwee questioned whether Hong had only interrogated him because he wanted help. Keeman appeared confused, and then exclaimed that she didn't understand anything they had been discussing since earlier, questioning why it mattered what gender Kim was. He asked whether she was drunk, but she told him not to change the subject. Hui reminded her that he was from Ark, and she acknowledged that while he had never told her directly before, she would have been a fool not to know how he acted at the research center. He began getting annoyed at Hong since the latter had brought him there without explaining anything. The scene jumps to later after Hui has explained everything to her. She pointed at Hong, declaring that surely he was done suspecting Hui now. The latter reached into his back pocket, stating that it wasn't much of an apology but produced forms of identification for him. Hong explained that the details had been filled in with what Hui had said while being interrogated. He also provided a hunter's license, and even though it was D rank, the former could update it later, along with a bank book and check card. Hui examined them, questioning whether the amount was correct. Hong confirmed he had made sure to calculate it correctly and should have already deducted the money he had spent that month, so the former should think of it as a favor. The latter observed that he knew Hui was happy, but suggested he could at least look at the documents after they finished eating. He wondered whether his face appeared that pleased, noting that the atmosphere for everyone was very cheerful. Hui stated that, ignoring the money issue, the fact that Hong had given him these items meant that he was finally accepting that the former was one of those children from Ark. He examined a flyer that someone had brought, feeling somewhat nauseous while questioning why it was written in such a formal style. Hui explained that it was an Ark research center, specifically a branch, to recruit new members. Hong questioned why they were acting like a third-rate cult, and he clarified that it was simply to increase their selection pool so they could find better test subjects, as one of their main goals was to create an artificial awakening method. Keeman and Hong were surprised by this revelation as chills ran down their spines. The latter asked what Hui meant by artificial awakening, and he questioned whether the man didn't know, explaining that the children were kidnapped solely for this purpose. The speaker then asked what kind of place the official had thought Ark was. Hong admitted he had thought it was just a crime syndicate, and his companion agreed he wasn't wrong. Hui looked down, frustrated, then explained how 2 years ago, somebody he knew who had been dispatched to the States was slaughtered along with his team. The man had traveled around the world tracking the perpetrator and ended up in South America, where he first learned of Ark. However, the deeper the investigator searched, the more he realized there were roots all over the world, ranging from all types of violent crimes. All the countries where they were located had already investigated them. The tracker declared he was starting to understand the organization, which he knew was focused on research. Keeman then raised her tablet, asking whether he could identify which rune it was. Hui stated it wasn't one he had ever seen before, and his colleague expressed surprise that there were runes the expert didn't know. The woman asks him about the rune, and the man shrugs, explaining he couldn't remember all of them, then did a double take at the tablet, declaring that he could figure out what kind of rune it was. The next day, Keeman could be observed raising the trunk of her car, telling the students it was time to eat. The manhwa quickly shifted genres to resemble a zombie apocalypse as the zombies charged toward the back of the car for the final survivor. Hui asked the woman whether she had brought everything he had requested. She cheerfully confirmed while handing it to him, and the man complimented her performance. Keeman appreciated the praise as her colleague handed her a notepad with runes, instructing the assistant to copy these and stick them on all the meat. The woman wondered why this was necessary, and her instructor explained that he didn't know why they had been so sloppy and rushed, so he had to draw several versions. She jokingly asked whether the expert had created the rune, and he told her to get to work. While all the students enjoyed their meals, Choi glanced to his side, noticing the pair working together. Curious, the student approached them, questioning why they placed a rune on the meat. Hui explained that it was for a test. Jinwoo asked whether it was to create a new rune, observing that they all looked similar. The instructor quickly tried to dissuade him, pointing out that his colleague hadn't eaten yet, so the young man shouldn't bother her. However, she assured him it was fine and asked how his food had been. The student responded that it was good since all their supervisor brought them was meat rather than vegetables. He inquired whether the man had returned yet, and the woman nervously laughed while commenting that their leader was taking a while. They learned that the official had returned to the dungeon to double-check something. Jinwoo began smelling something and then asked whether the instructor thought there was something that reeked. Hui glanced behind him, explaining that they used runes to decompose meat rapidly. The scene shifts to a younger version from his timeline, asking whether the older man thinks it is a good idea for the youth to get a hunter's license. Hong expressed surprise, stating that he had thought the young man didn't want to be a hunter. The official sat up, questioning whether his charge was being bullied at school. Hui asked what the guardian was talking about while picking up the remote, explaining there was too much competition in the civil service exam. The older man declared that he could make a spot for his ward, but the youth replied that it sounded like the official was trying to get dragged to another hearing. The student had only asked because he wondered whether he could get additional points for obtaining a hunter's license. The administrator considered this and admitted he wasn't sure. His protege reminded him that he was the most influential person in the management agency, and the official acknowledged this was true but clarified he wasn't in charge of recruiting. The man promised to look for information and suggested the youth go ahead and get the license with the highest rank he could achieve. The student complained that it sounded painful because he wanted to get a D rank. The guardian was shocked, declaring that the young man couldn't go for D rank as his son. The youth sighed, pointing out that he hadn't inherited the official's skill since he was adopted. Hong sighed, then patted the young man's head, admitting he couldn't win against him. In the current timeline, the official reported that somebody had been inside the dungeon. Hwe questioned what the man meant, and his colleague explained that although they were dead, they had found somebody inside the dungeon. The Daeon Guild had stated they would investigate it, so they just had to wait. The younger man appeared somewhat worried, and his superiors suggested they should prepare for the dungeon field training. Hwe asked whether the official planned to conduct it soon, commenting that his skills would make even B rank easy. The administrator questioned what his subordinate was saying while handing him a paper, explaining that he was the one who would be going. The recipient expressed confusion, and the supervisor declared that he should be capable enough. The instructor stated that if the boss planned to make him work like a dog, he should increase his salary. The official pulled the frugal option, claiming that operating a school was expensive. His employee pointed out they didn't even have many students, and the administrator snapped his fingers while mentioning they still had to pay for building construction. The worker asked when this would happen, but his superior began making excuses about how there were dungeons, and it increased the rate. The subordinate told the official to clear the dungeons then, and the man gently tapped the paper he had handed his colleague, explaining that this was what it was for. The instructor argued it would surely be faster if the administrator cleared them himself. Hong laughed, denying this since they needed results. It was a model school that would be built using the official's name. Many disagreed, saying that hunters didn't need a school, but they reluctantly agreed since the administrator was the principal. That's why the man had to show results if he or his assistant went in. People would consider it a skewed result. The official also explained how awakeners increased yearly, but dungeon casualties increased similarly. The hunters were becoming more unsociable as their skills stagnated. The school must not fail if they were to protect the newly awakened ones. The principal took a sip of his coffee, mentioning there was a more straightforward way to accomplish this. With a sparkle in his eyes, the instructor asked what it was, and the administrator announced they could declare they would be teaching runes exclusively at their school. With his eyes still sparkling, the employee declared that he would try his best. The scene cuts to later as the official informs the students about their dungeon run. He announced that it had been 3 months since the school opened, so it was time for a test. The instructor would be entering the dungeon with them, so they should listen. The teacher informed them that the practice training would be held on June 15th at the C-rank dungeon beside the school. Since he was there to grade them, he would only help during dire moments, so they should form parties and clear the dungeon. However, there were 4 things they had to understand: rank, environment, the location of the core, and the monster types. The instructor explained that the place had a natural environment similar to Earth, but there were also bizarre cases due to dimensional distortions. He instructed them to think of the dungeons they had seen in the media. While Hwe was speaking, Park began having a flashback. She recalled her grandfather showing her his unique magic, fondly calling out to her and declaring that she would become a mage who would surpass him. He had said he believed in her, and that even without him, she would be okay, she could do it. Some of these memories were also just her mental illness using her grandfather's voice. The instructor announced that this would suffice for a rough explanation, and that they should eat lunch, as they would conduct interviews in the afternoon. He told them to think about what they lacked when facing challenges. The students headed outside, and the teacher noticed that one student wasn't moving from her seat. He awkwardly asked whether she was going to lunch, but observed that she was crying. Panicking and thinking he had made her cry, the man asked what was wrong, suggesting he could call the principal. The girl wiped away her tears and, with a worried tone, declared that she wanted to quit school. The instructor appeared confused, and she explained that no matter how she considered it, she didn't have the talent or want to become a burden, so she planned to quit. The teacher hit her with a triple question, asking whether someone had said something to her. She quickly denied this, explaining that she couldn't use magic properly. The instructor questioned whether she knew how fast her casting speed was. The student awkwardly looked to the side, realizing that she did know this. He asked whether she thought her classmate couldn't use magic either. Park told him that Jinwoo had nothing to do with it since he had only awakened 6 months ago, while she had been awakened for over 10 years and even knew unique magic. She stated that she understood all of it, even the formulas, but couldn't even use the magic despite understanding it completely. Full of anger and sadness, the girl clenched her fist. The instructor called out to her, asking where she had learned unique magic. She replied that her grandpa had taught her before he died, and he wondered what attributes her grandfather had possessed. The student answered that her grandfather had used light. The teacher laughed, telling her that she was very talented. She was taken aback, and the instructor declared he would make her an archmage. The scene shows the man informing his colleague that the student is talking about dropping out, but he has spoken to her. The principal asked her reasoning, and his subordinate explained that she thought she had no talent. The administrator observed that her standards were too high because of who her grandfather was. He didn't know anyone stricter than Seong, her grandfather, had been. The instructor inquired whether his superior had known him personally. The official ate his food while confirming he had known the girl's father. He had last seen her grandfather when his friend died, only hearing about him again at his funeral. The principal explained that the deceased had been very strict with his son, but seemed to have eased up with his granddaughter. Hong continued, explaining that he had been a father who wanted to see his son succeed as much as himself, but his son had inherited none of his father's talents. Due to this, his son had tried to prove himself. He was overzealous and ended up dying inside a dungeon. The official revealed that the grandfather regretted how he treated his son and peacefully raised his granddaughter in his hometown. He had died a hero, helping civilians evacuate during a dungeon break. After that, someone else had taken care of the girl until she came to the school. The instructor asked when Mr. Park had died, and his superior replied it was around when the child turned 10. He inquired who the guardian had been, and the administrator explained it was Mr. Park's guild lawyer. The teacher questioned whether this meant the student had learned her magic solely from her grandfather. The principal confirmed this, asking whether it bothered his colleague. The instructor declared he suspected her grandfather had not been any less strict with her, as it was common among mages to force their children onto the path of becoming a mage even if they didn't want to. The man admitted he wasn't certain, but didn't want to interfere with her PTSD. He told the administrator to care for her, and the official made an indecipherable sound. The teacher asked what that response meant, and his superior replied that he felt he would care for her even if the instructor hadn't asked. The subordinate didn't respond, and the principal smirked, commenting that he had expected as much from her homeroom teacher. Hui questioned when he had become a homeroom teacher, and the administrator informed him that's what everybody already considered him to be. The instructor barked that his boss should raise his salary if he wanted him to be a homeroom teacher. The official mentioned that lunchtime was over and reminded his employee that he had to give a lecture. The teacher transformed into a vengeful spirit, demanding that the principal increase his salary. He ignored him while the instructor gave him a death glare from behind. The man picked up his food, announcing he would talk to the students and make sure the administrator cared for the non-mage students. The official felt a chill run down his spine and began pleading with his subordinate, insisting he couldn't do this to him. He walked off with determination. The scene jumps to the classroom as the instructor asks the students what they think about the situation, questioning whether they believe they can survive in a dungeon. One student inquired whether they should focus more on their survival than Seong on the raid. The teacher acknowledged he hadn't expected them to come up with such an excellent answer, so they should skip that topic. The young man appeared confused, asking why the instructor had told them to think it over when everything seemed gloomy. He led while explaining that it was so they could realize their uselessness. If they had thought it over, then it was beneficial. At first, everybody was useless. A hunter needed to know how to find their weaknesses and compensate for them. The student asked where he should start, admitting he was lost. The teacher raised a hand, questioning whether they knew what elements of magic existed. He explained that nothing was more subject to change than Seong, a mage's value in society. Hui continued, stating that now, mages were highly valued. But once the mana hiding rune was developed, their values would decrease. Perhaps they were curious about how mages adapted since they had already been isolated. They doubled down on it. He explained that countless magic research societies had disappeared as they all began attempting strange methods to pass their elements to their offspring. The archmage in France studied how mana worked and revealed how to find its element to the public. Other mages had learned from him and analyzed their children's mana to keep those who had the same elements as them while abandoning those who didn't. They had sent the abandoned children to hunter academies. The instructor announced to the students that they would find their elements that day. His assistant expressed surprise, stating she didn't want to interrupt, but mentioning that she was only aware of finding one's element by feeling it. He considered this, wondering how to explain the concept, and then told her this was a method developed by advanced practitioners. The same mage who made the runes caused the woman to start drooling from her mouth, saying they should give it a try. Then the teacher explains the whole process, but the explanation doesn't seem necessary. It involves putting a feather into water and then imbuing it with mana. Afterwards, it sprouts with the element they possess. In the assistant's case, roots emerge. Everyone is shocked, and the instructor remarks that now they can see how easy it is. The woman presses him, asking who the mage is, but he ignores her. Keenan demands he stop playing dumb and pleads for the mage's identity. She appears determined to know. The instructor responds that the mage is dead. Her expression goes blank, and she immediately feels guilty for pressuring him. One student holds a feather and begins imbuing it with mana. She says nothing is happening, and the teacher encourages her to keep trying. Eventually, the feather turns black, and she inquires what this means. The instructor reveals he suspected it was an elemental issue. Her element is shadow, the opposite of light. It wasn't that she wasn't good enough for her grandfather. Their elements didn't match. The teacher then tells another student to give it a try. As the young man begins channeling mana, a blue flame appears. He confirms it is a real fire and instructs him to release the feather. He adds that it isn't hot at all. A moment captures the student as light and his classmate as shadow. Later, outside the classroom, the girl admits she's been thinking about it and acknowledges she can't use her grandfather's magic. She has decided to view things from a new perspective. The instructor notes that she must have put a lot of thought into this. She smiles, expressing that although, unfortunately, she can't use the magic, she doesn't want it forgotten. She recalls the assistant's words about how many spells have been lost. She doesn't want to become another statistic. When Hwee asks what she intends to do, the student confidently declares that she wants to become her classmate's teacher. He is surprised by how perfect the solution is, asking if she's sure about teaching him all of her grandfather's spells. She affirms, adding that the young man isn't a random stranger. The instructor questions her certainty, pointing out how little she's known her classmate. She insists she's sure, and he warns that she might feel differently once she sees him use the magic. The girl mentions that watching someone else use the spells might be the closure she needs. The teacher realizes the student isn't as mentally exhausted as he had thought. Perhaps her youth allowed her to grow quickly, or he has a knack for counseling. He wonders how the principal handled her in the past timeline. Maybe he had just left her alone. Still, the instructor considers it good news for the male student. The young man is informed and responds that he doesn't want to proceed. Both the teacher and his assistant are confused and ask why. The student clarifies that while he doesn't look down on his classmate, her becoming his teacher feels strange. The woman challenges the relevance of that feeling. The boy responds that as a mage, he understands, but he doesn't want to do it. The instructor presses for a reason, and the student explains that treating a friend as a teacher feels odd. An awkward silence follows. The teacher becomes annoyed, calling the explanation foolish and asking if that's all. The young man acknowledges it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it's about how much the magic means to his classmate. Most mages awaken early in life, sometimes when they can barely walk. The student awakened far too late, which may be why he seems naive. Choi says he doesn't want to disappoint Park, nor does he want to exhaust himself trying to keep up with her. More than anything, he doesn't want things to become awkward. He has no grand ambition to become an archmage or master unique magic, and the student is content being ordinary. The instructor agrees to respect the young man's decision and lets him take a break. The assistant panics and questions why the teacher are giving up so easily. She insists he must understand the value of Mr. Park's unique magic. He then asks if the male student is truly as untalented as he believes. The woman admits that talent is subjective and hard to measure for someone who isn't a mage. She explains that while elemental magic can be mastered with time and effort, unique magic doesn't follow the same rules. Someone unable to use elemental magic might still excel at unique magic, or the reverse could be true, and it's all down to luck. When asked about the boy, she states that trying is the only way to know. She acknowledges that it's unwise to impose limitations, but understands the student's hesitation in carrying such a massive legacy, which is an immense burden. The instructor asks if the girl intended her classmate to be the only possible successor. He sighs, feeling at a loss. The teacher recalls a memory from his teenage years when the principal told him he would support him no matter his choice, whether attending college, becoming a hunter, or anything else. If anyone bullied him, the official promised to take care of it, even offering to make people disappear. The youth coldly refused, prompting the administrator to ask if the boy hated him. The man then tried to teach his ward how to strangle someone. The young person pulled away, calling him a freak, and wondered what the principal would do in this situation. He concludes that while he can't replicate the official exactly, he can still face things head-on. Hwee finds Park and informs her that Jinwoo has declined. She is at a loss for words and asks why. He relays that the young man feels unworthy and lacks the talent to be her student. The girl asks if the instructor tried to persuade him. The teacher replies that he did not do that because it was the student's choice. She reminds him that he once promised to make her an archmage. He replies that it was different back then. He already knew the answers. The instructor clears his throat, stating that she is a student, but her classmate would be her student. The realization dawns on her. The teacher explains that her first task as a teacher is to be honest and convince the student. Clutching her notebook, the girl yanks out a page and eats it. He comments on her questionable sanity. The student smiles and declares she will go. The instructor mutters that her mental instability is strong. In his timeline, the scene cuts to another flashback of the man as a child. The administrator tells the youth they need to talk, but he says he has nothing to say since he is not the official's real son. The principal barks at his ward and is taken aback since he has never seen the administrator like this. The official realizes that his anger got the best of him, and he goes to take a knee. The man tells the boy that he is still his son. The youth asks if the administrator is only like this due to the adoption, saying he will leave once he becomes an adult. The principal calls out to his charge again and says to stop saying his name as it is not meant to be told by the official since he is not his son, so he should not get it twisted. The boy says he is like a stray dog the man found in the street, asking if that is right. The administrator says he does not know where the youth heard that, but the child cuts the official off, saying that he has heard it from the principal's friends, and he understands why the other kids do not want their parents to mingle with an orphan. Hong calmly tells Hwee that he did not bring the youth here as a replacement. The boy asks if the official did it solely to write a lovely story about how he adopted a poor orphan boy. The administrator thinks about it and tells his ward that he ran away from his orphanage when he was 19 when he awakened, and the principal saw himself in the boy the day he found the child and wished that he would not walk the same path the official did. That is why he decided to become the youth's father, and he hugs him. The flashback ends with the assistant saying that she cannot pinpoint what type of person the instructor is. The woman does not know if he loves the students or not. He tells his colleague it is more of a fondness. She says that she agrees with them and asks how the male student is doing well. The teacher tells her that he helps guide them, and then, from his experience, the kids are emotional, and they often get too unstable with even the slightest poke. The young man might have been worried because he let his classmate down. The assistant says she understands, and the instructor continues saying they need to form a bond. Even if they are disappointed, it will not matter. Both students are crying, and the boy says that he never told them about this, and they both decide that they are going to give it their all to one another. 2 days later, the young man formally bows to his classmate, calling her teacher and asking her to look at his paper. The girl proudly takes the paper and tells her student that he is doing much better with this one. The instructor says this is a mess, but that makes him feel better seeing the student smile so brightly, and that if there is still a problem here, it would be Lee. Lee and Hanseong are sparring with one another and talking about how they just traded K and X. The instructor starts to fade out, saying he cannot believe the vibes are so different. The first student then asks the teacher if he or his sparring partner won. The instructor says to do rock, paper, scissors, which is the only way to determine who won. The student asks who fights like that, and the teacher says he does. The assistant's car pulls up, and the students greet her. The pupils ask if the woman brought what she said she would, and she says yes, dropping a fat stack of paper onto the table saying it is a standard contract. The assistant says that she brought a contract that she used so they could edit it to fit their situation. This takes back both students. The woman apologizes, saying it is short as she learned it from her father. One student asks if family members write contracts. The instructor reminds them that lawsuits always happen between teachers and students, which helps with that. The assistant says that they should be thankful it ended in the lawsuit as recently somebody was stabbed, and they made their niece do their bidding for 10 years over magic. The girl in question wondered why her aunt was talking to her when her aunt had a knife in her hand. The girl will not likely be found guilty. The male student is scared, asking if this is how mages typically are. His classmate says that if he has an issue with her, let her know before the boy stabs her. The young man quickly says that he does not plan to do that. The student says this contract is a headache since it is too long. The girl says that she would have told the assistant they were fine if she knew this was what the woman meant by contract. The helper is surprised, asking if they are not going to write one. The student says they will, but it does not need to be complicated. Park starts to write it out, and it pretty much just says that all of her grandpa's magic will be taught to Jin-woo, and she recognizes his ownership of it only when both he and she agree that there can be a new successor, and if one of them dies, the other may choose the successor. The girl snaps the pen and covers her thumb in ink, putting it by her name. The assistant is surprised, asking if this is it, saying it is so short. The student says this is all they need, asking her classmate if he needs to add anything. The boy says he is unfamiliar with it, but that his successor will be a student. The girl says it is true, and the young man says it is her grandpa's magic, so she should feel free to teach anybody with more talent than him, and he signs. The assistant has a mental breakdown and tries to convince them to write more specifics instead of being so broad, as they know this is legally binding. The student says yes, and they were hoping that the woman could be their notary, as with a grand primary approval, there would not be any legal issues. The instructor says they will learn from this even if it turns out sour. The girl then tries to give it to the teacher, telling him to sign it too. The instructor asks why, and another student says that she heard that 3 witnesses were a good number, and that she would tell the principal to sign it too. The teacher signs it and says that regardless of him, nobody can disregard it if both the administrator and assistant have signed it as well. Sometime later, the instructor is outside drinking his tea, admiring how peaceful and quiet it is, but he is confused about why it is so peaceful. The teacher is speaking with the principal about ARC, and the official informs him that the student is still being investigated. That aside, a test will soon ask how the kids are. The instructor says that he only knows how the magic students are doing. The administrator says he should be less cold and look after all the students. The teacher regrets talking to the principal. He says it is not like the instructor is doing much, and the classes are on hold due to the kids getting ready for the test. He says that is because the official put all the prep work on it for him, and then the administrator says that the student is teaching magic anyway. The instructor gets annoyed, and the principal smiles and laughs, telling him to keep working hard. The teacher says that even if his senses as a hunter are terrible, he feels weird being this restless and wonders if it is because there is no work to do. He then says no, as nobody balances their work and life better than he does. Even though the instructor's vacation days are piling up, it is normal for people to forget about them when they are so focused on work. Then something clicks, and he heads outside to see the male student, asking if it works. As Jin-woo already uses some of Park's grandpa's magic, Hwee feels something bright. The instructor is surprised and wonders if the boy is a genius. The girl says that is not the case, then changes to explain how her grandpa's magic is used to brighten up dark places, revealing hidden things and traps. It starts dissipating, and she watches, full of nostalgia, saying it is incredible magic, and laughs, asking if they agree. The principal spawns in with the thumbs up. The instructor then calls the student to ask her how the mana analysis is going. She says that she is working on it. The teacher asks if the assistant did not teach her how to do it. The girl says that the woman did, but she does not understand as it differs from how her grandpa explained it. Despite her different attributes, the instructor still finds it impressive that she can imitate light magic. The teacher tells her not to think about it too much, as if she gets hung up on it, it will not end up good. The instructor asks if she is good with elemental magic, and she says yes, but it is different. The teacher drops to the ground and starts to dig out a hole, saying the part about her using magic is the same. Hwee tells her to fill this hole with water, asking if she can do that. Startled, she replies that she can do it and then quickly casts a water spell. The teacher tells her to boil it now, and she starts to heat the water. As it gets hotter and hotter, the student is slightly drained, and the instructor tells her to stop asking if she understands it. The teacher asks her to think about why she can use light magic, which is the opposite of darkness. The instructor tells her that he is not sure since he is not a mage, but tells the girl to think about how water and fire are total opposites and asks about their formulas. She says them aloud, and she realizes what the teacher is saying now. Hwee tells Park that sometimes they can create an opposite effect just by flipping the formula, telling her to start from there. The instructor tells her that the rest will be up to her to figure out, and if she needs more help, she should ask the assistant. The student starts to ask if she cannot just ask the teacher, and he pushes her forehead back, catching her off guard. The instructor reminds her that he is not a mage, and he says that she is scared when her bangs come down, so he pokes her. The teacher says initially, they were meant to be 10 kids in this high school's first generation in the original timeline. The instructor is unsure how many would have dropped out after the incident. Even now, the classroom is unpacked, and the teacher wonders how it would be in the original timeline. He says the instructor probably would have dropped out by now, and only the anxious students had left. They were supposed to struggle for a few years before the academy changed its name. The teacher sees one student practicing her magic and calls out to her. The girl breaks her spell, and he scoffs, saying that there is a lack of concentration. She starts to tear up from the instructor's teasing. He says that as a hunter, she should always remain focused. The student reminds the teacher that she is a healer, and he asks if healers do not go into dungeons, telling her to try again, and she does so. The instructor thinks about something and asks her how her sister is doing, saying that he heard that the sibling went with the principal to be registered. The girl grumbles and says that even though it is still her little sister, she gets cut off by the teacher, asking her what is wrong. The student sighed, saying she didn't know where her sister got these weird ideas. She barely stops her sibling from putting her feet on ice before school. She keeps talking about how cold feet help with monarch circulation and other useless stuff. Hwee wonders why he has been feeling restless these past few days, asking if Jian is mentioning anything about doing something to help with the buildup in her veins. The student says that her sister was talking about detox and has been eating nothing but lettuce. The instructor puts his hand on the girl's shoulder, comforting her, and starts to think what will happen if the sibling gets brought into a cult. The assistant appears, asking if they are working hard. The teacher ignores her since he is focused on the younger girl and wants to piggyback on her success. The instructor even dreams about trying to keep the child under wraps. It flashbacks again to the man as a child. The administrator is saying that he looked at the youth's homework and asked him about what he wrote in the future profession slot. The boy asks if the official is seriously not known as a hunter. He says that he wants to hear his explanation. The child tells the principal that he wants a stable job and does not want people to order him around, as that is what he wants to do instead, but he knows that employment in private companies is unstable. The administrator asks the youth where he heard all of this, and he says it was the news, so he tells the official that he will become a civil servant instead. The boy does not want to become the president because that seems like busy work. He wants to become a middle-level manager who can delegate his responsibilities to others. He keeps talking about all of this, and the principal starts to feel a little worried, then thinks about it and pats the child on the head, saying that if that is what he wants, he will let him do whatever he wishes. Later in that same timeline, an older girl asks why the boy did not enroll in the academy. The youth tells her it is because he wants to become a civil servant, not a hunter. The girl is baffled, asking if the administrator knows about this, and then tries to get him to go spar with someone. But the boy tells his friend no, as he has an exam coming up. The girl proudly tells the youth that he will not have to do exams if he becomes a hunter. He says if he does that, he will become stupid like his friend. Poor young woman is caught astray. Later, as an adult, Hwee says it seems they cleared the dungeon with significant difficulties, and if they have come to reality after working under supervision, they are prepared to become a proper hunter. He asks them why they became hunters and want to continue it, saying that these are questions they need to consider seriously. Then they ask the instructor why he did not become a hunter, saying he has the license and the skills. Hwee bluntly tells them that he does not like to fight and dislikes doing menial labor. Back to the current timeline, the instructor is on the other side of the street, saying that he impulsively walked to the middle school. He spots the young girl across the street with a flyer in her hand, wondering if she is still buying into that nonsense. An older lady approaches the child, and the teacher calls her a scammer, asking if she is interested. The woman says that she is also from where the paper is, so she can tell the student more about it. The instructor looks up to see that it is not time to cross yet and gets annoyed. As soon as it is time to go, the teacher quickly calls out to the girl, who is surprised to see him. The child asks what he is doing here, and he stumbles, trying to find an answer. The scammer asks if the man is the student's teacher, saying he is very handsome. Hwee says he is, asking who she is. The woman says that she is not suspicious at all and hands the teacher her business card. Hwee is still calling her a scammer. She says that surely Hwee cannot tell what scammer does based on the name of her position, and it is just the team leader since he knows it is a pseudo-religion. She adds that they conduct various activities for children, such as fieldwork and summer camps, noting that many people are struggling with numerous dungeon breaks. As a result, they offer counseling alongside these activities. The scammer tells him that many people just like Hwee often visit her. He asks what she means, and she says that people who work with children often stop by trying to figure out how to help the children better. She knows that there are many strange places in this world, but she assures them there is nothing wrong with her people, and then shows him the branch where she works. The scammer claims to have branches nationwide and receives support funds from the government. He takes her card and looks at Jian, saying he knows Hyun told her to go straight home after school. She realizes she will get scolded, and he tells her to quickly go home without being sidetracked. She makes puppy dog eyes while saying goodbye. He says he did not think that Jiun would let him let her go. He does not know what this means, but the scammer says he might want to join them if she could talk to him briefly. He says he understands that she thinks he is an easier prey than Hanseong, a 16-year-old girl. She pulls out a tablet, saying this is her association, and shows all their sponsor companies, saying he surely recognizes some of them. He looks over and says that he is honestly not a teacher. He ends up working there, then thinks about what he should say and asks her if she has heard of Hunter High School. She realizes she has caught good prey and quickly says she has seen it on the news. She starts to praise him, asking if he is a teacher. He sighs and says, considering how some students have suffered through their childhood, it is no easy task. The scammer says she understands, and he must have gone through a lot, so she asks if he is a hunter. He says yes, but his rank is not high. She quickly changes the subject, saying that his dedication is essential, and then asks if they can talk at the coffee shop. They head over there, and he starts laying the perfect prey for her. A rookie low-ranking hunter who has only been a teacher for a little over a month, and how his concerns for the students are genuine, and that he has a strong connection to Hong, Korea's strongest hunter. So what better prey there is for this cult? He tells Hong about the pseudo-religion, the National Society of New Minds and Spirits. Hong asks why he is holding this. He tells him that some lady gave it to him on the street. He snatched it as she was cornering Hong's sister. Hong asks if he means Jian, and he says it is right and that he should keep an eye on her as her guardian. He says he is closer to a proxy guardian, but quickly changes the conversation, saying he easily convinced the scammer by convincing her he was worried about the students. She gave him a lecture and told him to attend in his free time. Hong asks if he is trying to get his permission to contact her. He says since he talked to her already, he figured somebody else could go this time and have them say they are a teacher just like he is at the school. Hong asks why he does not keep doing it. He reminds Hong that he is on probation. Hong says having him disappear without notice would be a problem, but it would be okay to let them know beforehand. He says that Hong is trusting him way too much and is speechless. Hong asks him if there is a problem, and he says no, he is just not good at this sort of thing. Hong asks what he means, and he says that he is not good at sneaking around and digging up information. Hong asks why not, and he says it is because he lacks talent. Awkward silence befalls the room, and Hong does his best to stop his laughter but lets it out anyway. Hong is wiping tears away from his eyes. He asks Hong if he is done laughing. Hong asks what kind of tasks he did at ARC. He says he did all sorts of chores. Hong asks if he ever infiltrated somewhere to gather information. He says that was not his job. Hong says that ARC had no clue and puts his hand on his shoulder, saying not to worry. Hong forgot the name of the place already. He tells Hong he says whatever, telling him to see what they are about. He says he already told Hong that he cannot, and Hong says not to worry, seeing as he has the kids in his hands. He should be fine, and he smiles, saying he is more than capable. However, he wonders if he will be okay, saying that if he comes into close contact with some people from ARC, they might recognize him. He says this is a good reason for him not to go, and Hong smiles, saying, surely, he has a plan. Hong continues laughing, saying that he surely has somewhere to run and hide if it happens. He starts to concoct a strange excuse, claiming that he wore a mask in ARC, so not many people know his face in the first place. Hong says there is nothing to worry about, then tells him not to overdo it, get a feel for it, and then leave and not take any unnecessary risks. Hong also tells him to get a phone while he is out, asking how he does not have a phone today and saying he must have no social life. He tells Hong that he is busy preparing a curriculum. Hong asks what he means. He asks how Hong plans to teach the kids without a lesson plan, at the very least, the raid protocols. Hong nervously sweats, saying that he is not great at explaining things. He continues to flame Hong straight indirectly, and he says he's bad, then hauls straight to the door. He says he is not ready yet and keeps berating Hong, saying the principal cannot run away. It jumps to the day of the dungeon raid practice. Keeman asks him when he plans to get in touch, and he says after the raid. She says he seems too relaxed about this, as he barely wears armor. Then she tells him to be honest, asking what his rank is and saying if he is an illegal awakener, he must have an idea. He tells her that she has seen his license, and he has a D rank. She gets annoyed, saying to tell the truth, and then sighs. She says that is the only way ARC would not be suspicious, and Mission went through a lot of trouble fabricating his background. He asks what kind of person she is to be able to create a whole life for somebody in just a few days. She says she also asked Mission once, and she was curious, and Mission told her that it was better that she did not know. He gets a bit worried because she messes around with his anklet, asking if he thinks the kids will be okay, and he says that the Daesan Guild filtered the dungeon beforehand, so if they cannot raid this, they should quit being hunters. She says that he did not even make them pick a leader and size, asking why he would make them pick a leader when only one had been into a dungeon before. She says that some of them are still from the guilds. She says that both Hanseong and Hyunwook are not clueless about raids. He completely forgot about the latter. She reminds him that Hyunwook is from a guild. He acts like this is new information, saying that he did not know that the fat pig was a guild-enslaved person. He laughs, saying that despite being a victim himself, Hyunwook acted like an idiot toward every other normal guild member. She takes his anklet off, saying he is all set, and he thanks her. She cheerfully tells him that she will leave the students in his care. He leaves her to read and then heads outside. The students turn, and he says that this time, he will make sure that Hyunwook does not turn into a pig, but rather, he will make him a human instead of an animal. A woman introduces herself to him, stating that her name is Kim So-jong and that she is affiliated with the Dungeon Management Office of the Ministry of the Interior and Safety of South Korea. He stutters for a second and then introduces himself to her. She asks if he has prepared the raid documents. He says he has pulled out the raid report and the students' licenses. He looks at her, saying that she looks familiar and that he must have seen her somewhere before. She notices that he is staring at her, asking if something is wrong. He says there is not. He is just nervous about the raid. She says that Hong has been boasting about his student skills. He says that does not mean they can let their guard down, and she agrees. Hong then starts barking at her, asking why she constantly yells at Hong but is so friendly towards him. She says that she would not have to shout at Hong if he did things right. He instantly recognizes her, who says she was the auditor present when he attacked the research lab. He never thought he would see her again like this, and she went through her fair share of hardships during her time, but it still worked out without trouble. He says that she is his role model as he wants to live the same life she did. She says hunters are usually dispatched to handle such situations, but they do not have many available hunters. Hong asks if he needs to call on other hunters when he is present, and she tells him that is just how the procedure is. They continue arguing while the students inside the van are all nervous, and he says they will burst into tears soon. He adds that they will enter the dungeon now, and she apologizes, saying that he should feel free to begin. He then starts logging on to the voice recorder, saying it is June 15, 2024, and 9 members are entering. It is the Hunter Training Model School, and he states his name along with every one of the students' names. They finally learn that the girl's name is Uni Young, and they enter the dungeon now. All the students look around, amazed at the landscape, and he tells them to pay attention, saying that he will not be providing any assistance, as he mentioned before. He will also grade them based on the extent of their contributions during the raid. Lee then calls out to him, saying he has been meaning to ask this question and wonders how the test results will affect him. He says that starting with the lowest score, they will have a personal meeting with the principal and remedial classes with him afterward. The lower the score, the longer they will see him. Lee and Jin Woo do not want that, and he then says there is enough chatting, and that he will leave them be, so they are on their own from now on. He walks away as they watch him leave behind some trees. Hanun Young then wonders what to do now. They start to recall the healer's position, saying they should be in the center as they talk. Hyunwook speaks up, saying that according to the information from the exploration, the dungeon core is located on the east side of the forest, and to reach the core, they have to pass the pixies first, asking if they remember their characteristics. They say yes, and he asks about the mana hiding runes. Jin-woo and Park both show they have them, and he starts to act like the leader, saying it is time to get going. He watches, saying that standing by and watching is a little frustrating. This is a forest dungeon with so many trees around that even pixies who possess intelligence equivalent to a child would bring water to extinguish the fire. But there are no water sources in this dungeon, so they can light the forest on fire and get away with it. If they were to catch on to this, they would all get it 100%, but nobody will. A pixie is screaming and jumping toward Hanseong, who hits it away. He says they have closed in on them as the pixies start swarming, and he calls for the mages, telling them to put up a shield. Jin-woo panics, but Park does not as she instantly chants, putting up a barrier in front of him, who says to finish them. She then starts to run in from behind, instantly killing the two pixies, and is gassed out now that the battle is over. He tells them to double-check to see if the monsters are all dead, saying that was their third battle, and he asks how everybody's rune papers are. She says they have already checked and found no problems, and they will soon reach the core. He asks if everybody is ready, saying that according to the exploration report, there are some rare cases where the location of the dungeon's core changes, so they cannot let their guard down until the end. As the students head over, they all say this is relatively easier than an average C-rank dungeon. Hyun asks Park about the dungeon she was in before, and she says that she went in with her grandfather, but she has only gone into an A-rank dungeon. Soon, Jin says that she has followed her master into a C-rank dungeon for training purposes. However, it was easier than an average C-rank dungeon because it was only for training. However, this place is a lot easier than that one. Lee gets excited, saying it's just an indicator of their skills, and he can't believe he is saying that with such confidence. Hyunwook thinks it would be easy because they have somebody protecting them, and the principal would never have allowed them in this dungeon if they couldn't clear it. He can't believe he has never been referred to as his teacher. The former continued, saying that when they were entering, he had also mentioned that he had already checked the nearby dungeons and, from what he could tell, had cleared them to make it safer. He says he is reluctant, but Hyunwook earns one more point due to his observation. The latter continues leading the group, saying that pixies always move in packs, yet the most they've encountered was around 8 at once. His warning that he would not intervene unless a dangerous situation occurred or whatever was just a bluff to make them nervous, and he was probably hiding behind a tree. Annoyed about being seen through, that is precisely what is happening. So he says even if this is the easiest dungeon of the lot, it isn't hard to raise the difficulty, and he will teach them a lesson here for getting too complacent. He explains that most of the world's tragedies begin with a dungeon break and a young Hyunwook standing on a road. Someone calls out to him, asking if he is okay and, by chance, if he has awakened. The man asks for his name, and he tells him. The man greets him, saying he runs a guild and asking if he would like to visit it. It would be a waste not to utilize the ability he has awakened, as he needs to learn how to control his body entirely, and the man won't charge him a training fee either. It's a little bit later, and the man says instead that he needs to go for a few runs under the man's guild, and if he succeeds as a hunter in the future, he can pay the man back. He looks up at the man, saying it didn't take long for him to understand the meaning behind those gazes and for everything to become hell. In a flashback to him in class, he stands up, saying he heard about him being swept up by the monsters while saving Sagan, and he should at least thank him. He begins to walk over, and the other turns, noticing him, and says that he reckons this lecture on runes must be too tedious for him. He says that the gaze is giving him PTSD, as it was like the other was looking at an inanimate object and appraising a slab of butchered meat, and he was instinctively repulsed by it. The flashback ends with the pixies dying, and Hyun says that the number of pixies has decreased. He says that is because they are getting closer to the core, and they should complete this task quickly and then exit. Even though this dungeon may not be difficult, they never know what excuse that person might make to deduct points. Hanun Young says that sounds like something he would do, and she asks if they saw how he laughed at her while making her roll in the mud, and she wanted to punch him. She says that she once asked the principal whether it would be possible for him to tone down the training. He says that given the principal's personality, he doubts Hong would listen. She says there isn't even a place to shower, which is too much. He asks if she said that to Hong, and she says yes. He says that Hong probably told her that she wasn't going to live luxuriously inside a dungeon. She says that is precisely what Hong said. He continues by saying that Hong also probably told her that she would see worse things when she becomes a hunter, so she shouldn't make a fuss about having some dust on her clothes. She begins to get flustered, saying that is precisely what Hong said, and she becomes frustrated. Park tells her to wait, and she asks what it is. She asks if they hear something. It is a bunch of pixies screeching, and they instantly get swarmed by a whole horde. He manages to block a couple of hits for her, but then notices one going for Hyun. He yells, knocking a pixie away with his fist, saying they need to protect Hyun. He wonders what is happening so suddenly and why many debate whether they should get out. He begins to think about the man he met when he was younger, saying that he would have made someone a sacrificial lamb and continued the raid. He realizes that the sacrificial lamb could be none other than Hyun. This usually isn't the case in other dungeons, but healers are useless in this one. Their inferior physical abilities make them a burden. He then starts to hate that he is thinking about this, having said not long ago that he was being used as a sacrifice for the monsters, and wonders why the thought would even cross his mind. He hears someone calling out to him, and he is losing his vision as the pixies are contaminating his thoughts. The pixie gets cut in half in front of him, and his eyes instantly open wide. The other asks him why he is spacing out during a raid and needs to get his act together. He then starts to shake and fall over slightly, and the other is confused. He watches as the rest of them are getting harassed by the pixies. The other tells Jin Woo to put his shield up, and Sagan needs to focus on the northwest. Hanun Young needs to stick to Hyun, Hanseong needs to watch the southwest, and Park needs to use a barrier as well. He gives a countdown, telling them all to do it now, and they instantly comply as a barrier is applied, blocking the pixies. He says that they need to reposition themselves. He didn't even do much. All he did was light the rear of the forest on fire, which chased the pixies out in a single direction. He didn't do it out of anger at the kids. It was an official method from the training manual, and he wouldn't have done it if he thought the kids couldn't handle it. Even now, they're fighting well. Once they have locked in, they don't have to face all the monsters. All they have to do is hold out until the pixies pass, destroy the dungeon core, and escape. The reason they fell apart must have been because of him. Ever since they entered the dungeon, he had been giving orders naturally, and the kids had been following him. Even during regular training, he always acted as the leader. No matter how much a leader's ability can affect the success of a raid, relying solely on the leader for everything is not right. Therefore, he already knows how he will grade them later. He tells Hong and Keeman in the van that the dungeon raid failed. Hong is confused, saying that the dungeon disappeared, and Soonjin confirms that the raid succeeded, asking what he is talking about. He says he will tell them the details later, and when they return, all the students start to leave. He says he will tell them the final grades tomorrow, and he doesn't even know if that matters. He tells them all that they are dismissed. All the students leave, but Hyunwook, Hong, and Kimin sit awkwardly. He asks why he is not leaving, and then inquires if both Kimin and Hong can exit so he can speak with him. As they leave, he tells him to speak his mind. He doesn't say anything at first. The other says he is not trying to lecture him, and if he has a problem, he should fix it for his own good. He finally speaks up, saying that he shouldn't be allowed to become a hunter, as his voice is shaky and full of tears. In a flashback to Hong's apartment, he stands there, wondering what's going on, as he explains that he ran there because Hong said it was urgent. He looks at the other, and Hong says he is the only person he can leave the other to. He asks who this kid is, and Hong says it's his son. He asks if Hong kidnapped him, and he says not at all, but he has been his son for a few years. Hong will return as soon as possible after finishing the raid, and in the meantime, he hopes to take good care of himself. He stands there confused, and Hong continues saying that Jian is also in a dungeon and Hunter Lee is abroad, so it's been tough. But then Hong thought about him, heard he cleared an A-rank dungeon recently, and considering his personality, Hong thought he would rest for at least a whole week. He says he is right, but tries to say he doesn't want to do this. Hong tells him that he will find Hong's credit card on the table if he wants to buy anything. He says he never agreed to do this, asking if Hong thinks he will go along. Hong nods, saying it seems that way, and then leaves, telling him to take care of Hong's little boy. They stand there awkwardly. He looks down at the other, wondering what to say, and introduces himself as Hong's student, asking him his name. In some more backstory, they learn that the guild he founded 2 years after graduating from the academy was called Memorial, and it became the talk of the town in just 1 year. He also got wide recognition, and as much as the other hates to admit it, he is a remarkable man. A bit later, when he is older, he vomits in a corner. He then turns around after vomiting, asking the other his name again since he is now part of the management agency. He then looks at his face, says he swears he has seen him somewhere before. The other says he is pleased to meet him for the first time and introduces himself. He says he is sure he has heard that name before, and the other says they are already significantly behind schedule, so they should hurry. He says there's no need to be so hasty, pulling something out of his robe. He says he will take care of it and leave it to him, and he starts chugging it. The other is surprised, asking him if that's alcohol, and if he has gone mad since they entered the gate. He doesn't defend himself and asks if the other wants a drink. The other refuses, and he says it's because his brain doesn't function well unless he drinks this, and he always has to drink before a raid. He walks away, saying they should get this over and drink more later. The other says if he has to work with this pig again, he will punch the director and quit his job. All of the flashbacks end, and he is crying. The other wishes he would stop and call out to him, but he continues saying that he shouldn't be allowed to be a hunter. All the other can see is a crying pig, and he hands him some water, telling him to drink and calm down, and he thanks him. The other says, of course, being gentle-hearted might mean one cries often, but what he really can't stand is those who think crying is all it takes without realizing their mistakes. If he were a staff member of the management agency, he would be giving him one hell of a scolding. There's only one reason the other is going easy on him right now. He needs to nurture him to be a proper human being. The other asks him why he thinks he shouldn't be a hunter. He says that the other is sure he has heard that he is from a group, but the other cuts him off, saying he knows about his guild. He says it sounds professional when the other puts it that way, but he lived as bait for 3 years, being treated like a meat shield. The other says he can imagine what he went through, a typical, mundane, and tiresome story of being tricked into a fraudulent contract at a young age, but it's still something that no child in their early teens should ever go through. He says he vowed to become a proper hunter and gather people like him to form a guild that would help others and prevent such things from happening again. But when the pixies attacked him in the dungeon, he thought it would be much easier if he used those who weren't helpful in combat as bait. He thought he hated that guild master more than anyone else, but it turned out that this was the most familiar method to him. He grits his teeth, saying he finds it loathsome. The other says there's somebody he knows who grew up in a similar situation to his own, and he believes he needs to use a different approach from what he did for Park, because he can tell that this is the same person he knew from back then. The other says that, like him, he once signed a contract, not knowing any better, at a young age. The other eventually escaped with the help of a kind passerby, and that person also wanted to help others in a similar situation. Now that he thinks about it, he believes they are very similar, and he faced the same struggles as the other person because that's who they are talking about. With what he just confided in the other about his pig-like behavior, he now understands the other a bit better. In the end, he can never escape the memories of his past, such as his old guild, the disaster of his school, and all the other memories. The other wishes Jiun had given him a heads up because now he feels bad for the guy. The other says it was amusing to see the guy who used to crawl around drunk and donate faithfully yearly. He generously compensated the victim's family on behalf of the guild and even took on the role of ambassador for a campaign to eradicate illegal activities in dungeons. The incident where he got stabbed in the past was actually because he had been covering for those who were embezzling guild funds. The other continues saying that despite all his hardships, he kept going. He asks about it, and the other says that he continued to help those who went through hardships like him. The other once asked him why, and he continued. In a flashback, the other person says that he is sure others take care of them, and he is aware that he won't be rewarded for it. He says that he is sure the other knows this is a rude question. It's amusing how his father asked the same question, too. The other is surprised, and he continues saying that regardless of all that, he can't believe it was keeping him up all night. The other says he never said that, and he continues by saying that he is so curious that his insides feel as if they're twisted. The other also never said that. He says that he has no choice but to answer. He is not a moral person, and to be honest, he can do worse things if he wants to pursue efficiency. The other asks then why not, and he says it's because he doesn't want to fall to the same level, and he must prove that he is better than that. The flashback ends, and the other tells him that he must also prove the same. It's his life, so he has to make his own choice. The other asks him if he knows anything about his previous guild master going to jail. He starts to get angry, and the other says he is sure that must be frustrating. So he should show him that he can succeed without resorting to the same methods the guild master tried on him. It jumps to later as the other explains to Hong and Keeman about what happened. Hong asks if he knows how surprised Hong was when he deemed the raid a failure, and if they can't clear a weak dungeon, they can't be hunters. The other says that they should at least receive some counseling. Hong asks if he means him. The other says that it was not just him who heard about Hanseon working as bait, and the students who were isolated during the dungeon break incident must have experienced tremendous stress. Having them undergo psychological counseling at least once seems like a great idea in his book. Hong says he wants to be straight with him. Of course, they are good options, but what are the odds of a psychiatrist being awakened? It's not entirely impossible, but that needs to be the case. When a hunter goes on a rampage while being counseled, what are the odds of an awakened psychiatrist being able to subdue the hunter? He is confused about why these matters, and Keeman says a few years ago, there was an incident where a doctor was killed by a hunter who had a panic attack while being counseled. Hong says the hunter didn't do it intentionally, but the problem arose in the aftermath as it brought the world into an uproar. He asks if the doctors refused to provide treatment, and she says that rather than that, they wanted measures in place to guarantee their safety, such as wearing a mana control unit like he is currently wearing. He says the others must have refused it. She says that nowadays, counseling can only be provided through a phone call. The patient can't even see the counselor's face because there have been incidents where the doctor visited the hunter. He now understands that all the counseling he received when he was a kid was only possible because it was before he had awakened, and he wishes the kids could have something similar. Hong says there's no way proper treatment can be provided like that, so naturally, the hunters stop seeking counseling. He tries to justify it by saying that they're kids, but Hong says they all have licenses and are all above a D rank, so they can't expect any help from experts. Hong sighed, saying if it were truly such a big shock, he wouldn't have followed him to begin with, so he doesn't need to worry about him too much. He says, but still, in the end, they are children. Hong says it's not like he doesn't understand his concerns for the children. Then he explained that he remembered that mind thing from Ark. He tells Hong the proper name, saying it's about time he memorized it. Hong says he recalls his saying that they tried to lure him into joining them with child psychology. He starts to get a bad feeling as Hong says that since he is going anyway, he needs to pay attention to the lecture, and maybe he will get something out of it. The kids have grown familiar with him, so they can also give him the position of a teacher counselor. He says he doesn't think that should be the case, even if they are short-staffed at the school. Hong states that considering how well he handled him, he believes he fits. He mentions a raise, but Hong instantly asks the waiter for more beer and starts waving, asking for it, completely ignoring him. The scene jumps to the next day as he is leaving a phone store, and he thinks about Hong, who says that once the hunters cross a gate, they're isolated from the civilization outside, meaning only the strongest hunters will survive. The kids will graduate in just a few years, and after that, they have to solve their problems without any help from Hong. Therefore, he can't deny the necessity of struggling and overcoming that struggle alone, so they'll be able to leave the nest and fly with their wings, but there are limits. He never expected Hong to be caring, and he even thinks more about the children than he expected. He starts to look at the news about Hong. He says most of them are irrelevant, and he thinks about them and decides to call that scam number. The scam lady picks it up and introduces herself. Hwi says it's been a while, and then she said that she knew he would call, asking where else she could find a teacher more caring than him. He is annoyed since the scam lady only saw him once before. The lady tells him there's a meeting for children with dungeon break trauma in Suwon, asking if he can spare the time to attend. He sticks his phone away while the lady is talking and waits for her to finish, saying he is unsure if this is the right choice. It jumps to them in a car, and they hear Keeman asking him if he is okay with such an underwhelming entrance. He asks what she is saying, and she replies that they should have brought Amy to lift their spirits. He asks who Amy is, and she informs him it's her car. He asks what good gathering attention will do, and she says that he was the one using his relationship with Mr. Hong, and it would be better if he let it be known that he is close to the Archmage. He responds that it is not needed because the principle suffices. She asks what's with that ungrateful attitude since she drove him here. Then she wishes him good luck. He enters the building, and somebody holding a clipboard asks if he is here for the lecture. He says it's a familiar face, and the man asks for his name. He tells the man his name. The guy looks at the listing and says team leader Hong has invited him. The man can head straight to the small auditorium on the second floor and needs to display this on the back of his phone upon entrance. He is surprised, and the guy asks what's wrong. He says it's nothing. He looks like someone he knows, and that's all. He then says that not only does the man seem like someone he knows, but the man is the same person, and he wondered what number 3 was doing after graduating from the lab as a failure. Now he knows the man is here. They learned that number 3 was 15 years old and the oldest child in the laboratory. Since graduation and disposal were decided around 13, number 3 was practically an adult to the younger children. Number 3 remained even after that period because he was a good child who managed the younger children well under the director's instructions. Or perhaps it was because the director disliked him and didn't want him to be the one managing the children. Regardless, it didn't stop number 3 from getting the kids to harass everyone, and it became even easier after he disappeared just before turning 16. This was an unfortunate turn of events for the director. Number 3, who used to keep him in check, was gone, and nothing held him back. Even though they weren't on good terms, he had grown somewhat attached, so he remembered it bitterly. He never thought that he would meet number 3 again like this. In the auditorium, one of the scammers begins their speech by stating that every child has a unique personality and is in a different situation. The instructor asks the crowd what the most important thing is when talking to children, and they all yell for love and patience. The instructor confirms that this is correct and suggests splitting into 2 groups to discuss. He's surprised that it's helpful, and he wonders if it's because people would be put off if they blurted out strange things from the start. One of the girls in the audience calls out to another, saying she noticed she was absent last time. The girl says she's been too busy with work and couldn't find time to attend. He starts to wonder if these people could already be affiliated with ARC, or if this is the method they use to increase their believers. The girl keeps yapping and then spots him beside her, asking if this is his first time. He affirms it, and she apologizes for only talking among themselves, saying that he should join in as well. He says listening is good enough for him. They are all teachers. One of the girls in the front asks him what school he works at, and he says it's a high school. They start to say that high school students are very sensitive, and this discussion goes on forever until he gets up, saying he needs to use the bathroom. As soon as he heads out, he wonders how to extract helpful information at this rate, saying he can't even confirm if they're truly affiliated with ARC. He decides to talk with some of the children working here, but he wonders why he needs to when he sees number 3, who he is certain is affiliated with ARC. Besides, if the ARC has targeted him as their prey, they'll come first without him needing anything. On cue, number 3 rolls up, calling out to him and asking if he can help, and he responds that it is expected. He then asks if he dislikes the lecture, and he replies it seems like he doesn't recognize him. He feels sad since they spent so much time together in the laboratory, but it makes sense. If number 3 knew that the adult version of a little child had traveled across time, he might as well immediately go to ARC himself and beg for his life. He asks number 3 if he's a volunteer here, and he says yes, and he's here to get his hours in, although that's not the entire reason. He asks why, and number 3 starts to get nervous, saying that he suffered because of the dungeon breaks, so he comes to help the children who experience the same things as he does. He says that's kind, but now he understands what he's going with, and he says he's also in charge of students with similar experiences. Number 3 is surprised, and he says they all seemed fine on the outside, but it turns out they weren't on the inside. He stands there for a moment, and there is an awkward silence before he apologizes, saying he said that without thinking. Number 3 says he shouldn't be apologizing, and he likes talking about this topic. At first, he hated even thinking about it, but now he enjoys it because he can help others who have had similar experiences. Meanwhile, his watch beeps, and he says he shouldn't be too impatient and go back in. He thinks it must have been tough for number 3 to talk to him about this, and he thanks him. He replies that it is not the case and goes to say something, but he cuts him off, saying he's sure. He writes his number down on a piece of paper and rips it out, giving it to number 3, saying that if he needs something, he can contact him. He adds he's not a big shot, but he's still a hunter. Number 3 is surprised, and he smiles, saying that he can't believe he's being the perfect prey, and surely, they'll take this opportunity to try to get him in. It jumps to later with Hong, and he explains how number 3 was there, and they don't give names, just numbers. Hong asks about his younger sibling's number, and he replies that he is number 12. Hong gets extremely angry, saying they are worse than animals, giving the same expression he gave when he beat up the guys in the laboratory. He states that he should investigate orphanages, and he heard they have a child sponsorship project. Because they removed the children hastily, they left some traces in the training centers, and if they sent them to various orphanages, it would be easier to avoid attention. Hong responds that he has a point, and will let Hunter Lee know about this. Then Hong says that he and Miseon Kim have a dungeon to clear in 2 days, as it was an urgent one that just appeared, and in that time, he needs to take care of the students. He asks for how long, and Hong replies that if the dungeon was in a rank, he could have guaranteed it would take a week, but he has no idea about this one. Hong tells him he shouldn't worry as her guild will help. He wonders if there was an S-rank dungeon that Hong cleared around this time. Hong also tells him that Hunter Lee mentioned they cannot further delay repairing the school facilities. He asks if that means they will construct a new building for everybody, and Hong says that'll be next year. He then asks about the mana control unit, saying he didn't put it back on after the raid. He asks if he wants to use it again and responds that it is not the case. Hong states that he doesn't have to then, and it's easier for him to teach the students without it, asking if he's wrong. He looks to the side, mischievously saying sure, and then asks if he can proceed with the lectures following the curriculum. He asks what curriculum, and he gives him a death glare, saying he gave it and told him to take a good look. Hong clears his throat, saying he remembers reading it now, and he says Hong doesn't need to lie. Hong clears his throat again, and just like that, Hong leaves, telling the students to listen to him while they are gone. He finds himself in class, and Miseon asks about their scores. He says honestly that he was ready to criticize and tear them apart, but she came and told him it was about time he gave them a carrot. She was sure the students already knew what they had done wrong, so there was no need for him to scold them. Instead of discouraging them, he needs to encourage them to do better next time. He reminds Miseon that there is no next time when it comes to raids, and she gives him a love tap, saying he doesn't need to say that, and that he should wear the clothes that she gifted him this time, too. She states that he shouldn't be wearing casual sportswear to work. He then asks them what they think is most important to prepare for when they do a dungeon raid, and any answer is satisfactory. He tells them they can repeat answers, too, and Hyunwook says supplies, Hanun Young says combatants, Hyun says information, and Jinwoo says he will say supplies as well. A car pulls up, and he tells them all their answers are technically correct, but all of them are important. He asks them who reviews the dungeon information to pick a strategy and decide on the team, and who determines the necessary supplies. They all say that the captain explained 2 significant reasons for failing to clear the dungeon. Firstly, they did not entirely appoint a captain with the authority to command others within the dungeon. Miseon opens the door as he continues, saying they relied too heavily on Hyunwook. No matter how easy a dungeon may seem, he always tells them to appoint a captain and a vice captain so that the other can take over in case one is neutralized. That was a dungeon, and they all should never have failed at their level. He starts to recall her words, and he says it became easier after he reorganized their formation, and if they had kept their mind clear, even that wouldn't have been necessary. He then goes to conclude it, but remembers her words once more and says that dungeon raids aren't just about fighting well. From now on, he will also teach them how to use their brains. They should consider how they would approach the raid if appointed captain. Then he tells them they need to take a short break and gather in the mage classroom. Miseon has also brought some snacks if they would like some. He walks over to Miseon, and she says it's been a while. He talks about the dungeon that Hong entered, and she asks what about it. He asks if the dungeons will have sirens, and she asks where he heard that from. He asks if it's true, and she sighs, saying it is. It's a siren dungeon located on the coast of Su, and it has already devoured many hunters. He knows it because it is also known as the Siren's Nest. It was a dungeon break in 2027 that had come in as the support personnel, and their goal was to rescue hunters and civilians ensnared by the siren abilities. The only casualty was herself, and a hunter sneaks up behind one of the sirens, and he gets cocky, saying he doesn't get what people are having a hard time against a monster who can only sing. As soon as she turns around, his mind goes blank. The Siren charmed the weak-minded hunters, and because moving would break her unique magic, she let herself be attacked even though she knew it was coming. After the establishment of the Ability Management Agency, Hong's first task as the director was to clean up the aftermath of the Siren's nest as her corpse lay on the ground with a blade in her chest. She realizes that he is lost in thought, and he says even though he knows that her death is in the distant future, nobody can expect his emotions to be purely rational. Initially, they shouldn't be exploring the Siren dungeon, and he feels very uneasy about it. But with Hong by her side, things aren't likely to go wrong. He sighed and told her it was nothing, and she said okay then. Then she snaps her fingers and asks him if he would like to join her guild. She says trying to avoid attention is pointless once they publicly announce the runes. She plans to announce the runes with the least impact first, and if that goes well, she will reveal the Mana hiding rune. Having him in her guild would make it easier to control the information, and if things go south, they can just handle it under the guild's name. He says he understands but does not intend to join a guild. She asks even if it's only a name alone, and he replies that he has to decline. She takes it like a champ and says okay then and doesn't let it bother her. He is surprised, and he thought she would push more. She asks if that's what he wants, and he responds that it is not the case. She then smiles, saying that he saved their youngest and thinks she should do something for him. Unless he suddenly murders a passerby for some reason, she can cover for him. It jumps to the Siren dungeon as Hong and everybody else walk forward. He has some style as his earplugs and ears are protected from the sirens, and for some reason, it focuses on his dog tags. This might be a flag, and he asks if they've all thought about it during their break, saying there are no correct answers in the raids and that they should think quickly to devise a strategy. He asks them who wants to go first, but nobody speaks up. Then he added that since Hyunwook was the captain, he would like to ask who he would appoint as vice captain. Hyunwook says Hanseong since they've teamed up before, and he has some dungeon experience. He says they'll consider the white pieces the raid members and the black pieces the monsters as he shows them a chessboard. He states that hypothetically, they've entered the dungeon, and according to the exploration information, the core is located east of the forest. He asks him what he will do, and he replies that he'll proceed toward the core. After entering, they'll use the runes prepared by their mages and start their formation. Hyunwook says that Hyun will be at the center with the mages on both sides of her. He'll stand in front, and Hanseong will stand in the rear. He says that 15 minutes after entering, he encountered a single pixie. He responds that they'll kill it, and he asks about the reason. Hyunwook explains that pixies are monsters that usually move in groups. Still, some may patrol individually or in pairs within the territory, and he chooses to kill it quickly before it can return and bring more. He states that the distance between him and the pixie is around 15 meters, with 3 trees between the two obstructing the pixie's view, so the pixie has yet to realize that it has been spotted. Hyunwook says if the pixie isn't retreating, they'll move closer until they have a clear view. He will inform the rest about the pixie via hand signals and ready the mages, and once they are close enough with a clear view, they will attack and kill the pixie. He says he has gotten closer to the core now, but a massive group of rampaging pixies will attack his group. Hyunwook thinks about how this happened before, and he says they will focus on getting their formation correct to ensure they do not get swept away by the pixies. Soon, Hanseong himself will deal with the pixies in the front, and since they don't know the reason behind the pixie attacks, their goal is to endure. They'll kill the ones in the front and let the other pixies go. He tells them the pixies have passed, asking what they will do next. Hyunwook says they will destroy the dungeon core before anything else happens since their goal is to clear the dungeon, so there isn't a need to find out the reason behind the actions. He looks down at the chessboard and looks at him, wondering what he will say. Then he smiles, saying that the raid is complete. Hyunwook sighed in relief and then asked what the score was. He noted that dungeon raids don't have scores. Then, he asks what the point was, and he says it was to determine whether the raiders would live or die. Now, he would like everybody to take a turn before the class ends. If he appointed Hanseong as vice captain, he would love to try it now that he is the captain of this group. He asks if Hanseong would like to appoint him as vice captain, and he replies that he will pick Hyunwook. He asks why, and he responds that Hyunwook is more skilled and experienced than he is. They continue, and he says they have entered the dungeon, and Hanseong has encountered 6 pixies right at the gate. Surprised, he says such a thing didn't happen at the dungeon they raided. He says that he never said this was meant to be a copy of the dungeon they raided, as no 2 dungeons are ever the same. They need to remember how he told them he would teach them to use their brains, and there is no easier way to learn it than this. Back at the Siren dungeon, a siren flaps its wings. It looks more like a harpy as it's causing the water in the ocean to swirl, and some of it hits Hong. He says, as expected, it would have been quite a struggle without her. The siren sings a song, and Hong says that many hunters underestimate the dungeon because the monsters are sirens, even though no survivors made it out of this dungeon for 3 years. The sirens have been devouring hunters endlessly. She looks over at one of the raid members, who gives her a thumbs up, and Hong stops one of the sirens. He wonders if a rune can block out the voices of only the sirens. He says his goal was first to surveil him, but he has helped make things more convenient. Hong explained that it had almost been a whole year since he last went on a raid, and he could no longer ignore the pressure from the government. In such a circumstance, a skilled hunter devoted to teaching students and willing to design an entire semester's curriculum appeared out of nowhere. Once the Ark incident is resolved, he would like to take some time to nurture him, too, as he is the perfect age for his talent to bloom. While Hong is thinking about it, one of the sirens tries to grab his polearm, and he says oops and pulls it away, thrusting it forward. Then Hong pushes off the ground with his foot, leaping into the air above the siren and stabbing it straight through the chest. The siren screams, but he can't hear it due to the earplugs. Another siren from afar watches and gets angry, leaping off her little rock and flying straight towards her, who is standing still. As it gets closer and closer to her, she starts to turn around, and Hong tanked the attack with his body. She screams out to him, and it jumps to the next day. He says they've been taking turns, so he wants to do it differently today. He wants everyone to listen to the situation, and anyone can suggest strategies if they think of a suitable one upon hearing the details. They should speak up, as this is a dungeon about to break, and the top priority is to clear it as fast as possible. The monsters that appear in the dungeon are pixies. Hyunwook is annoyed that they are being treated like pixies again. He explains that right after they pass through the gate, they'll see plains, and a forest is located at least 10 kilometers away. Hyunwook asks if they know the location of the dungeon's core, and he says no. Unfortunately, the exploration of the dungeon was done poorly. They see neither the core nor the pixies. He asks if there's any nearby cover, and he says no. When they arrived at the dungeon, all the mobs knew their locations. Hanun Young asks how the weather is, and he says it's sunny. She then thinks about something, saying they should light this place on fire. As pixies don't usually come out of their territory, they stay wary of intruders, and are smart enough to set up traps and ambushes. Knowing how they operate, they would be the only ones at a loss if they decided to cross the plains, so if they could light the place on fire, the pixies wouldn't be able to escape because of their mobility issues. He then asks about the raid team, saying that with the fire raging at such a large scale, it won't make it out unscathed. She says they need to exit the dungeon for a bit and return. He stares at her, surprised, but she can't read his face and wonders if she might have done something wrong. He then holds a sticker in her hand and sticks it straight on her forehead. She blushes and is confused, and he tells her well done. He starts to think about what he should give them if they collect 10. She is still surprised when he hears a car pull up and looks out the window to see it. He heads outside since it's her car and calls out to her. She is teary-eyed, and she asks him if he can go to the hospital with her. He asks if the raid was successful, and she replies that they succeeded, but there was an accident involving Hong. He starts to feel uneasy, saying that's impossible. He apologizes, saying he needs to take urgent leave and hopes they can take care of the students for the rest of the day. As they drive to the hospital, he says there's no way Hong would have trouble fighting the sirens, wondering why. She thinks she would like to tell him this in advance, and that she opposes this. She starts yelling, saying she told him she was against this. She wonders what kind of person Hong is, and that she never wants to work with him ever again. She headbutts her steering wheel, and he asks what the hell is so wrong and why they're heading to the hospital. She lets out a long sigh and says that she needs to check the time, as they should have started by now, and he should check his phone. It will be on the first page of any website he visits. On the news, they say that this dungeon has been fully closed, and the Decision Guild will release the details of the raid. There are no fatalities, and the wounded have been moved to the hospital for treatment. To recover the exhausted raid members, the guild requests that they refrain from interviewing. People started to ask if the rumors about Hong being injured were true. They continue this, saying that he was sent to the hospital. The man leaves the interview, saying he does not plan to answer any questions. It jumps to later at the hospital, and both he and she stand there staring blankly. Hong says that he thought he would at least shed a tear when he saw him bleeding heavily from his head. He adds that it would be more dangerous for the kids to discover the truth because he hadn't faked it properly. Hong recently attacked a few of their branches, so Ark is laying low for now and trying to stay under their radar. He says this must be why he wanted to fake his injuries to observe their movements. Hong responds that it is true, and she asks how he is doing so well, saying she saw him get hit. Hong says she did. She was a VIP watching his injury. She tells him to stop joking and answer correctly, as she thought they were fake. Hong explains that the blood is from the sirens, although he did take a hit. He asks how the most excellent hunter in Korea would get hit by such a weak mob, and she adds it's her mistake. On top of being nervous, it's been a while since her last raid, and she didn't even notice the siren approaching because she had her earplugs in. He says she must have failed to put up a shield, so Hong covered for her. Then he asks why she was so frustrated on the way over here. She says that it's because Hong said he needed to deceive the students too, and he only told her when she arrived at the hospital. Even she agreed, saying it was a great plan. Hong says that he told her he's not hurt at all, asking if she wants to see his stomach or something for proof. She barks at him, saying no and not wanting to see his uncle's belly. Hong asks when he got his uncle's status, and she says he's closer to a grandpa. He clicks his tongue and eventually says okay, and that they can't tell anybody about this. It's his last resort, so only the two can know. He pulls out the dog tag, saying he picked this up in a dungeon in Mongolia 5 years ago. It is an item that absorbs the damage he receives. She asks if such an item exists, and he replies that although it can't absorb damage infinitely, the total amount is fixed. So, when the wearer takes damage, their name gets engraved in proportion to the damage they absorb. Thanks to the sirens, the first consonant has been fully engraved. He quickly leaves, saying he has to go to the bathroom, and he explains that even 20 years later, when he was given one of the 2 dog tags, only the first letter of his name had been barely completed. If he had returned this dog tag or hadn't taken his leave for his vacation, he would have been able to hold on for a bit longer and survive until he made it to Seoul. These 3 clear letters are the only proof that his director ever existed. They make him feel even guiltier about the death of his father, and he sits there saying damn it over and over while squeezing onto it. If he had known things would have turned out like this, he would have called his father at least once. He wonders why he never told Hong how he felt, because in the end, Hong died without ever hearing those words. It jumps to a later time as he sits on his couch, and someone calls for someone named Jong Hun. He tries to say they've got the wrong number, but the person yaps that if he doesn't pay his debt at the end of the month, he's going to kill him. The man starts to curse at him, so he curses back, asking if he didn't hear him. The guy gets angry, asking who he thinks he is, and he hangs up the phone, then looks back at where the call came from. His phone rings again, and he thinks it's another scammer. She asks if he is not going to answer it. He says it seems like the previous owner of this phone was in debt, and even if he blocks the number, they'll keep calling him with a different one. She tells him he should still answer it, then picks it up, saying the teacher is unavailable. When the caller introduces himself as Kang Tiwoo, she is surprised and tells him that he will be there shortly. She hangs up, and he asks why she did that. She says this was the person she was talking about from ARC. Number 3's name is Tiwoo, and she says he should make him come to him first. He mentions that Hong's tactic of faking his injury works quite well. They look at the classroom filled with get-well-wish items and wonder what to do with the students. He says that's not their duty, as it's his duty. He calls back, asking if he called for him. Tiwoo says he's sorry for being so abrupt, but he couldn't think of anybody else. He thinks he's awakened, but he is surprised and wonders if this happened in the original timeline. Tiwoo says he's scared because everything he touches breaks, and he's even hurt his siblings. He doesn't know how since he remembers being a massive failure, as he was the only successful outcome from the experiment. But even then, it was only a faulty success. He asks him where he is, saying he'll be there soon. He says he'll text him his address and thanks him, saying he had no idea what to do. He tells him it's okay and that he should relax, but he gets annoyed. She mentions that it's a strange timing for Tiwoo to have awakened. He says Tiwoo has probably been hiding it and only decided to reveal it now. She looks at the address and says it's pretty far, reminding him that he doesn't have a license. Then he looks over at her and begins to smile, and she realizes he wants a ride from her. She tells him to get one of the hunters from her guild to help, and he insists as he has to show off his connection by getting a ride from none other than the great archmage. She gets annoyed and suddenly thinks about something, saying she has a good idea. He asks what it is, and she suggests that Tiwoo requested his help because he's having difficulty controlling his power and they should have him enroll in the school. He says it is not the case, as they can't let someone from ARC into their school when they don't know what Tiwoo would do. He continues saying that's not even an option, and she must be out of her mind to consider it. She says it's the most surefire way and reminds him that Tiwoo was with his younger sibling. He now says Tiwoo brought this upon himself, for a person who has come this far for their sibling wouldn't be picky about their methods. So, Tiwoo loses his right to refuse when the word sibling is mentioned. He tells her he'll ask Mr. Hong first and FaceTime him. Hong immediately says that since they're past the Daesan period, Tiwoo will be a transfer student, and it finally feels like they have a proper school going. He doesn't want to be here anymore. Later in the classroom, he says he wants their attention and hopes their assignment on creating a raid guide is going well. He tells them to ensure it's done by the end of the week, as he and she will be leaving early today. He is not sure they'll be here tomorrow, but they should work hard on what he told them about. Everybody looks gloomy, and he asks what's wrong. Park starts to shake, asking if it's because of Hong and if his condition is that severe. He says Hong is doing fine, but because of his business, they don't need to worry. Hyunwook asks if it's his business and why he is bringing her. He tells him it just happened, and Jiun then starts to say his name repeatedly, asking if she can attend every day this week. He tells her to do as she pleases, and she gets excited about it. Somewhere else, a little boy is drawing in the sand, writing something out, and the boy seems excited. A woman calls out to the boy, and he instantly sits up, dropping a stick as he runs over. It's his younger self in this timeline, and he then erases his name, leaving no trace, and runs to the woman. Things are getting interesting now. She is swerving between some monsters on the street, and people are bleeding out on the ground. He tells them to charge straight in. In the back seat, Taewoo is praying to God, promising to live a good life, take care of his siblings, and want to live a lot longer. He yells at Taewoo to stop being so pessimistic, and she then hits a pole. He continues wondering if it's because he wishes to become a hunter, something he feels unworthy of. He yells, telling her to look in front because there's a giant fire lizard dog. She asks why it's so big, saying they can't beat that. He grabs his seatbelt, telling her to bring out the rose vines, and he kicks out the windshield. She says this is the best she can do for now, and he says it's good enough. He wonders how it ended up like this. In a flashback to 2 hours ago, they were at an agency to register Taewoo as awakened. He asks if it's still difficult to control, and he replies that it is true but better than the first time. He says usually one's body gets used to it after a day, but of course, this is when accidents happen the most, so being careful wouldn't hurt. He recalls that Taewoo has younger siblings, and he gets excited, saying that there are a lot of kids in the orphanage. The receptionist then asks him if he can come with her to take a picture. Taewoo gets very nervous, and he anxiously follows her while stumbling. She says that seeing as Taewoo can't even control his speed, it seems like it's true he just awakened. He says not to be fooled, and she wonders why he is so harsh with the kid, asking if Taewoo did something wrong. He says something like that, adding that no matter how often he thinks about it, Taewoo wasn't awakened in the past. He wonders if it's genuinely a coincidence this time, or perhaps Ark succeeded in artificial awakening. Maybe that's why they disbanded the River of Promise, but he shakes his head, saying there's no way. Even though a lot has changed since he saved the kids at the school, it shouldn't have reached this extent. He starts to talk to another receptionist about something else. Then they're in the car, where he has a slime and a Petri dish. He tells him that it is a present and that he should try gripping it. Taewoo squeezes it, and it breaks and goes back into the dish, saying he can't believe he ruined the present. He reassures him it's okay and that the pieces will stick together again. It's slime for awakened people and is used as a training tool. Taewoo needs to have the strength of an awakened to scatter the orbs, and when the mana is depleted inside of the orbs will stick together again. He seems excited, saying he finds it very interesting. They continue driving down the road as they stop at a red light. He asks what he plans to do now and what he means, and he says usually, when people around his age awaken, they wish to be hunters. Taewoo asks if that is the same for him. He states it is false, as he awakened earlier and didn't even want to become a hunter. She asks how he became one then, and he forgot that the plan was to encourage Taewoo to enroll at the school. He adds that it was fun once he tried it, contrary to his expectations. He tells Taewoo if he wants to be a hunter, he will help him. He asks if he remembers the model school he taught him about. Taewoo asks if he means the hunter training one. He replies it's a little lacking to be called an actual school, but the principal will take care of that as soon as possible. Speaking of the principal, Hong frequently appeared on the news channel. She gives a thumbs up out of his sight and says Hong will soon leave the hospital, so he shouldn't mind the rumors. Hwee then says he is sure it would be better than joining some shady guild, and if he is interested, he can have Hong's number. Taewoo thanks Hwee and then notices something outside as he sees people running, wondering what's happening. Then, the mobs called salamanders run rampant in the streets, and the flashback ends. Hwee jumps off the back of the car around a lamp post. Once the vine is pulled taut, he starts to run forward, bouncing off salamander heads and getting closer to the giant one. He receives the vine around its mouth, but it has too much force and opens, moving it further down. It now gets lassoed around the lower end of its jaw, and he pulls the vine up as tight as he can, causing the giant salamander's head to raise and close its mouth. Keeman takes the chance to quickly drive under it, only for it to slam back into the ground, destroying the road immediately. Taewoo still cries, saying he will be a good child, and she wonders if they made it, only to get jump-started by Hwee jumping on the hood of the car. They all die and are sued for child neglect. Hui says the big one passed out, and the small ones have been blocked off. Keeman tells him he looked pretty cool out there. He asks how they get to the orphanage from there, and Tiwoo says he needs to turn right up here and then leave after. Hui says there wasn't even any emergency escape program for such a situation, and that this isn't something an emergency text message can solve. They arrive at the orphanage, and Keeman quickly blocks off the road with her vines. She asks if this is the right place. Tiwoo says yes, and she asks Hui if he thinks the big one back there was a boss. He says he is unsure, but it was too small to be the boss. He adds that it was good that none of them spit fire because if they did, she would cut him off, saying he shouldn't say such things. He then feels strange and continues walking forward, wondering why he smells blood inside the orphanage. He then calls out to Keeman, saying he would like her to stay with Tiwoo. She looks worried and says okay, and he then heads inside the orphanage. There is nobody in sight, and he follows the smell of blood only to find someone wearing an apron who is bled out all over the stairs. He says if a salamander attacked someone, their flesh would melt away from the venom, but there's no way a wound like this would come from a salamander. He wonders where the children are, as everybody that he has seen dead so far isn't a kid. All 10 people lying on the ground before him are adults or close enough. He says there are no traces of running away or resistance, as if they were killed by somebody close to them. Hui then heads inside the children's room and is immediately repulsed, as all he finds are their corpses littered around on top of one another. He quickly heads back outside and says it's time to go. Tiwoo asks about his siblings, and he responds that he will tell them later. The boy presses, asking why Hui can't just say it now and what happened to his teacher and siblings, insisting they are surely okay. He starts looking very panicked, saying they are his siblings and he needs to know the truth. Hui wonders if this is part of his acting, saying that since the orphanage is in this state, the connection between number 3 and the Ark will likely weaken. If they take him in under the pretext of protection and enroll him in the school during this time, it would be easier to monitor and identify if Ark were to contact him. He thinks about what to say and recalls a flashback of Hong telling him when he was younger that Hong knows everything he has experienced so far is stressful and probably traumatic. However, Hong points out that Hui mentioned he disliked the director. Little Hui says that he did, and Hong warns him that he is doing the same thing the director did, asking if he wants to be like him. Little Hui is surprised and screams no, saying he doesn't want to be like him. Hong says he is much better than that human garbage and needs to become a better person than someone like him. He laughs in his face, saying that Hong knows Hui can do it. Back to the present, Hui headbutts the window, saying that he has always lived up to those words until now, and there's no way he plans to give up. At the hospital, somebody said that the laptop was now connected. Mission asks if they can wait outside while the adults talk. The kid looks happy and leaves, and then she says the incident occurred on a weekday afternoon, so fortunately, most children were at school. The safe children are currently being protected elsewhere. As for Tiwoo, there are records available up until his first grade of elementary school, but after he started homeschooling, there are only broad details, and it isn't easy to find out exactly what he did. Hong asks if the list of suspects has been narrowed down, and Mission says she's checked the surveillance cameras and dashcams, but they didn't yield much. Only the culprit, who was hiding in a hoodie and covered their face with a hat. Hong asks if there are any clips of the face, and she replies that this is not the case, as this was only acquired by zooming in on a distant clip. Keeman asks if it's a male or female, and how the perpetrator managed to get away with it. She says they should see for themselves and play the video. The person swipes their hand behind a car, and it immediately starts to compact in on itself from where it was impacted, slowly turning into a tiny ball, even distorting the camera. Then they enter the orphanage only to come out around 10 minutes later and look up at the camera with their pants soaked in blood, giving it a thumbs up and then breaking it. The only thing visible is that they had red hair. Keeman wonders why they killed everybody in the orphanage, saying maybe it's a serial killer who took advantage of the dungeon break. Hui says leaving no evidence at all would be possible with their skill, and he believes it was left intentionally as a warning. She suggests that the perpetrator knew the orphanage was connected to the Ark, but Hong solemnly says he knows who that is. That's the person he was chasing in South America. Mission is surprised, and he says that when he was chasing them on the black market, he had never seen them, and in the end, they got away. Hui asks how Hong's so sure and says he has heard a rumor about them. The rumor says they are a crazy man who turns anything they don't like into a small ball and makes it their trophy, but it's strange. He chased them in the first place because he heard they were the Ark's boss. Keeman is surprised that it's a child based on their stature, and Hong says it's only a rumor, so he doesn't know the details. Hui says that maybe it was an internal strife if they think about the fact that there were no signs of resistance at the scene. That can be the only explanation, and then Miseon continues, saying there were no stolen goods or data, which also fits what she thinks. Hong makes a sound and says they should put out bait, and they have part of the arc, and it could be simple. He could tell Tiwoo that someone is targeting his orphanage, and it seems the director has gotten involved in something bad, putting him in danger. The other children are being safely protected, but going with him would not be easy since he is awake. Given that situation, the boy should head to the model school. Even if he doesn't become a hunter, he still needs a way to protect himself. If they can spin that to him, and he believes it, it will benefit them. Miseon smiles, saying she likes it, especially since they don't have to lie. She asks if she should investigate more about the person in the video. Hong says it is not true, and if that person is going around killing anyone affiliated with ARC, it means other places are in danger. So first, they must find his sibling. Hwee is confused, and Hong says he knows that he is being careful, but if that person goes around killing anyone related to the lab, his sibling must be in danger, and he should spill more information about his sibling. The more they have, the easier it will be to find him, and they should start with the basic things. They ask Hwee his sibling's name, and he is still being cooked. Another flashback to 4 years ago, located on the lowest underground floor in a particular training center where the students were attacked at the start of the series, which is the River of Promise Research Center. A woman asks number 3 if he slept well, telling him a happy birthday, saying that they prepared a cake he likes. Number 3 thanks his mom, and she says that she told him not to address her by that word anymore and looks sad. She asks how long he plans to act childish, telling him to think about what the others think about him, and he says he's sorry, researcher. They say that's better because he is alone in the room. Number 3's rubbing a wound on his arm, and the researcher says that he endured well and that there will be a visitor in the afternoon. Tiwoo is surprised, and she says maybe visitor isn't the correct title, as it'll be the new director stopping by. The first director he met at the research center had a bad reputation among the children of researchers, so he did not last long. Though often absent due to being busy, the next director cared for the children by establishing snack and nap times. When Tiwoo wonders what type of person this one will be, one of the little girls calls him Big Brother, and he asks her what she wants. It's learned that she's number 8, and she says that today is his birthday, and she heard about it from the researcher. The boy says that's right, and they'll have cake later. She has something in her hands and says here's her birthday present to him, as it's cookies, and she saved it from yesterday so she can give it to him. Tiwoo looks around nervously and whispers in her ear, thanking and calling her by her name. He breaks one of the cookies in half, saying he should share it with her. She laughs, saying she gifted it to him, yet he is giving it half of it back. They then hear a ring, and he runs over, saying he thinks it's the researcher and she needs to behave as he heads to the door. It opens by itself, and a man is heard saying he likes the atmosphere here and the children seem bright, as there are multiple people. One of them says that he checked the ocean before coming. It wasn't good, and he had to dispose of everything, so he was worried. The researcher lady from earlier says they can't compare them to the ocean, but he is more curious about who the director is. Then Tiwoo spots somebody in the back wearing a plague doctor mask, and he says that he's called the executioner or the observer, and he killed the first director. There is little Hwee inside his hands, asking his mom where they are. She asks if he is at the research center and if he heard dad explain it yesterday. Hwee affirms it, and the man asks if he has already forgotten, saying he should stay here for a while. Little Hwee sees some Legos and asks if he can play with them. The woman thinks he can play with them while mommy and daddy look around. They then spot number 3, asking him if he's the oldest and what his number is. Number 3 tells them which one it is, and the observer puts down little J. The director then asks Tiwoo if he can watch her son for a little bit. He replies that he can do that, and the birdman thing guy stands outside the window. Tiwoo then walks over to little Hwee and greets him. He introduces himself, asking for his name. Little Hwee laughs at him, asking for his name, saying that one can't ask for that here, and asking if he should tell his mother. Then Hwee instantly says he was kidding and looks inside his hand, asking if it's a cookie, saying he wants it. Hwee instantly yanks it, saying he won't tell his mother if he can have it, and he says he forgot the name. Then he starts to remember what his dad said his number was, and he says that he is probably number 12. Tiwoo looks annoyed and says that after the new director came, contrary to his worries, their lives in the research center did not change. Number 12 didn't stay in the playroom. He only came around at snack time and left around dinner time. The other children were very wary of him, but when number 12 brought toys and food from outside, they all drew close to him. He walks up to Tiwoo again and has a cookie in his hand, saying he looks great. The older boy explained that all he had to do was give his snacks to number 12. He then slowly starts to open his eyes as the flashback ends. Tiwoo is sitting up in his bed, and his arm shakes, and he grabs onto it, saying everything started changing when the third director died, and even more children entered. And when the 12th father, who became the 4th director, passed away suddenly, he, who had lost both of his parents, started living in the room. Since then, everything began to change. The slime is on top of a newspaper, and Tiwoo looks down at it as he spots an article mentioning many casualties in an orphanage due to the dungeon break. He wonders what is going to happen to him now. He explains that when he met her back at the orphanage, Tiwoo was so excited that he even dropped what he held. He thought that the heavens were helping him. However, he never thought he would see her again after graduating from the lab. Even though she had grown bigger and he could no longer lift her easily, she was as cute as ever. But the heavens took away his younger sibling as if mocking the idea that they could continue to be together forever. He then gets a knock on his door and looks over as Hwee asks if he is awake. Hwee says he has something to discuss and asks if he can enter. Tiwoo allows him, and in his mind, he says that the director is happy that Tiwoo got Hwee's number, although the director is dead now, too. Hong steps up first and introduces himself. Tiwoo recognizes him as a hunter. Then Hwee says today, Hong is here as the principal of the model school, not as a hunter. He says he thought he would tell Tiwoo about the current situation. Firstly, the orphanage was attacked by an unknown stranger. Some people want to eliminate the orphanage. He asks why they would want to do that and states that they are still investigating the details. Since Tiwoo was the oldest in the orphanage, they wanted to see if he could remember hearing anything strange from the teachers. He grips his blanket tightly, saying he is not sure. The boy then asks if they are saying his siblings did not die because of the dungeon break. Hong says that's right, and if he could tell them anything he remembers, it would help find the culprit. Hwee says Tiwoo has two options: wait until the ARC contacts him again or speak up and join the school. He adds that Tiwoo doesn't have a place to stay, asking if he would like to attend their school. He is taken aback, asking what he means. Back in the classroom, Hwee looks over everybody's raid guides 2 days later. He sees a few pages, asking who they picked as the captain. Hanun Young says that they didn't pick one, and since he told them to make a guide, they figured that they probably weren't a raid party, but an advanced party. Hwee is surprised they avoided his trap, asking who they were going against when they wrote this guide. She says they didn't have a specific target, and they followed the International Hunter Association standard for raid guides, trying to exclude elemental magic as much as possible, only sticking to the typical kind because they were going into a tunnel. She did suggest light attribute magic, though. Hwee is surprised, saying Hanun Young might be the smartest here. Still, if someone from the management agency working under him handed this to him as a guide, he would tell that person to quit as soon as possible. But he tells her good job nonetheless, as the fact that a group of 18-year-old kids wrote an 80-page long guide is something very commendable. Everybody's super excited that he praised them, and he asks what's wrong. She asks if they did a good job, and he replies that he meant what he said, telling them they did great. The atmosphere is as cheery as ever, and he can't help but see them as baby chicks. He sighs while smiling, saying it'll be one good job sticker for all of them. Everybody has their stickers. Hyunwook even put his on his phone. Hwee hands out the last one, saying they should get back to the topic. The guide does have some points that need to be fixed, and they'll leave the feedback for later. After hearing that the principal has been discharged from the hospital, it may not be a time to commemorate the occasion, but they have a transfer student. The room goes quiet, and Hanun Young asks what he means, wondering what kind of student wants to transfer to the school. He wonders why that's what she's surprised about, saying that this is still a school, and she shouldn't be so harsh. She says she remembers hearing Hwee complain about the school a while back. He clears his throat, saying Keeman will bring the student here in the afternoon, while Hanun Young and Sung Jaeon gossip, saying that Hwee couldn't refute what she spoke. He says the students are a year younger than all of them, but in the same grade, so he should not tease him for being the youngest and taking care of him. The wind blows as Tiwoo sits in Keeman's car, looking outside. She says that this is the school he will be attending from now on. He is surprised they're already there, and his face instantly changes to one of shock. The boy says he thought they said the school would be entirely constructed next year, and she asks if they said that. Hwee's just glad that somebody else now understands his pain and that he understands exactly how it feels to be scammed by these people. He then introduces everybody to Tiwoo and reminds them that he is younger than them and will be in this class starting today. Hwee asks the new student if he wants to introduce himself, and then he gets a bit startled and then, in a very nervous tone, says his name to them all. At a smoothie store, Hwee is rubbing his eyes, thinking he is hallucinating, but Keeman is happy. It turns out the man behind the counter is none other than Miseon's assistant, and Hwee recognizes him. The man is surprised, asking if they've met before. Hwee asks what's with the name tag, and it's learned that his name is Gugun. He says that Miseon told him he needed a name tag to be a barista. He asks Hwee if he needs to see the menu. Hwee asks for 1 iced Americano, saying all he has from this workplace until now is instant coffee, and that he should take this chance. Gugun then asks what kids like to drink nowadays, saying they only drink hot smoothies. Kemen tells him that it's good, and Hwee also decides to get one. He drinks it and explains that Hong is absent again since he said he was going on a dungeon raid. At this point, Miseon or the financial backer should be the principal. Hwee agrees with Kemen, saying that the drink is good, though. Tiwoo is looking up at the sky outside while people are talking, and he is practicing with a gift that Hwee gave him. Hwee hands him the strawberry smoothie and sits beside him, asking him how school is. The boy says that even if Hwee asks about it, he is unsure. Hwee asks if his awakening is confusing him. Tiwoo replies that's part of it and looks hesitant to talk about the next one, but explains it anyway. He says that the director of his old orphanage had a son. They used to play together a lot, but he didn't like him that much because he was so annoying. The son would mess with other kids and take their snacks away. Hwee wonders if he is perhaps talking about Jae. Tiwoo continues, saying that if the son sees someone taking a nap, he will wake them up and harass them as much as possible, and he is talking about little Jae. The boy says the son is annoying, but he can't hit a kid. Hwee agrees, and then Tiwoo says that the director suddenly passed away, solidifying that he is talking about him. The older boy thinks about it, saying that he doesn't know since the son seemed fine on the outside, but on the inside, he could tell that it bothered him that the director went missing. The son's confident attitude instantly shifted to one of him being distracted and spacing out. While watching that scene, he realizes nobody knows what life will bring them. Hwee says he learned a lot from his misfortune. It wasn't even a misfortune, and he distinctly remembers not liking how he had to be pushed around, but he wasn't particularly sad because they didn't have much meaning to him as parents. And besides, his only real dad is Hong. Tiwoo continues, saying that compared to that, he has lived a peaceful life and never thought he would awaken. Hwee asks if he doesn't like the fact that he did. He replies that it would have been better if he had done it in the past. He then explains it's because of his little sister that he planned to live with her once they got out of the orphanage. Had he awakened earlier, he would have become a hunter to make money, but now she's not here anymore, so he feels lost, and there's no point in pursuing a hunter career. Hwee understands that all he has to do is ask if he wants to capture the person who killed his sister. Still, he doesn't want to manipulate his emotions and turn them into anger to control him because he is just a 17-year-old kid, and it would make him feel guilty. He thinks about it briefly and tells Tiwoo to do whatever he wants. The boy is surprised, but Hwee explains that he was in the lab for so long and was, in fact, born outside of it. And before Tiwoo entered elementary school, he lived like any other kid. Even Jae, born in the lab, dreamed of leaving the lab while listening to his stories, so it's not hard to imagine what he yearns for as someone whose freedom was taken away. Hwee tells him that the most important thing is his own will. If he wants to become a hunter, he will help him, but that's also fine if he doesn't and wants to be alone. Tiwoo doesn't look like he knows what he wants to do, and Hwee continues, saying it's okay if he wants to make this his hobby. Moreover, he can do whatever he wants. Then Hwee asks where that annoying child he was talking about is. The boy says he doesn't know since the child moved somewhere else, asking why he is curious. Hwee states that it's because he mentioned that the child became an orphan overnight, so he was worried. Tiwoo says that he hopes the child is doing well. Then Jiyeon is heard screaming, wondering what's going on, and asking how he got into school, but she doesn't. Hwee explains it's because she is still in middle school. She starts having a tantrum, saying that she awakened much faster than Tiwoo and wants to be tested. But Hwee is used to her tantrums because of how close they were to his timeline. He looks at her and asks what she is doing here. She is supposed to be at school. She replies that school is not important right now. Hwee sighs and orders Hyun to take her little sister. Meanwhile, Hyun lands on the ground, pinches her little sister's cheeks, and says she told her not to skip school. Jiyeon replies that she did not skip it, and then her sister interrupts her and states that she told her not to leave early. She replied that he had not said anything last week, so she did not bother the school. Then Hyun tells her she has done that because she let her get away with it. On the other side, Hwee asks Tiwoo if he said he wanted to try the test. He replies that it is true, and honestly, he still does not know if he wants to become a hunter but would like to try it. Jiyeon again interrupts and says that she wants to become a hunter. Then Hwee looks at her and tells her that the middle school is not an official educational institution yet, so she would be considered a dropout if she left her middle school to enroll here. He adds that she should study for another year and take the JED because she is better off waiting half a year to get her diploma. Hwee asked her if she understood it properly, and she nodded. Meanwhile, Hyun apologizes for her sister's behavior, and then he smiles and asks her to treat her sister to something nice at the coffee van because he wonders if she has had her meal. She replies that her sister would rather die than skip a meal, so she probably ate before she came here. After that, Jiyeon starts sobbing, and Hyun pushes her towards a building. Then Hwee tells Taewoo that he can try the test without any hindrances because it is nothing, so he should not get too nervous. Then, it moves to a flashback where little Hwee sleeps on a couch, and Hong appears there. Hwee looks at him and wonders if he did something wrong, because he told him not to touch the items he brought from the Dungeon game, so if he finds out that he played with the coin. Then he gets up, and Hong asks him if he is hiding in his fist. Hwee opens his fist, and then apologizes to Hong by presenting it to him. He replies that he is not here to scold him, and Hwee states that he will not touch it without his permission again. Hong explains that this is not the case, and that he should not touch items from the dungeon thoughtlessly because he would not bring anything dangerous in case it could be. Then he asks him if he is getting it, but he says he has something to ask and should remember when his hand and the coin glowed. He asks Hwee if he can do that again, then shows his hand to Hong. Hong looks at his hand and replies that, as he expected, it is mana. After that, he picks up the coin from his hand, and Hwee states that the glow has gone. Then Hong asks him if he has shown anyone that he can do that, and he replies that he does not tell anyone about it, and that he is the first. He advises him to ensure he does not show that to anyone except him. Hwee questions about it, and explains that he is saying so because not everyone can do it, and if he tells others he can, they will get jealous. Hwee yawns and says that this is nothing, as he can do it too, and all he has to do is pick up some particles. Hong asks about the particles, explaining that they drop from the coin if he shakes it. Hong asks him if he wants to go on a hike right now, and he replies that he does not want to. Hong smiles and asks him to teach him a few exercises so they can go for it, and then the flashback ends. In the present, Hwee shows Taewoo a piece of paper and asks him if he sees it, and he replies that it is a piece of paper with a drawing. They ask him if he can see anything else, and he asks whether he is supposed to see something else. Hwee extends that paper towards him and says it is okay if he sees nothing else. After that, he advised him to avoid erasing the drawing, so he should just put it on his palm. Then Taewoo picked up that paper and asked him if he was supposed to hold it that way, and he replied that he should not move. The mana conductivity test manual activates the auxiliary rune that gathers the surrounding mana and the last subject. The tester holds one end of the rune paper and infuses a small amount of mana. Moreover, mana flows from the tester's hand, through the paper into the rune, and finally into the test subject's hand. After that, Hwee says that when he was 13, long after that coin incident, he finally realized that no one, not even Mr. Hong, could make their hands glow like he could. Because the particles he saw were mana, he was the only one who could see them with the naked eye. The Pioneer Project. It is a project by the ARC to artificially awaken people, which continued for over a decade with no success, but in reality, it was a failed endeavor. He realizes that during this test, most awakened individuals would feel a slight tingling in their palms. Still, an artificially awakened one could be different for someone like him. Suddenly, Hwee is amazed when he sees Taewoo's hand glowing and asks him if this is supposed to happen. Hwee looks at him and states that, thus, the second successful sample of the Pioneer Project was born. After that, he holds that paper, and then Taewoo asks him what he just confirmed, and he replies that his sensitivity to mana is quite high. The boy asks him if he passed, and Hwee replies that it's not like that because one's sensitivity to mana has nothing to do with a hunter's skill. He adds that he was trying to use it as a reference to set the direction for the lesson. Then Hwee says that he should not mention that this sensitivity was created through experimentation, and that it is better to keep things ordinary. Then he tells Taewoo that once he adapts to his awakened body, his stamina will quickly grow, and asks him if he has learned any sports or other weapons he would like to try. He replies that he is unsure and asks Hwee about the most commonly used ones. Hwee replies that most students use swords, too, so he can always switch his weapon if it does not suit him, so there is no need to worry too much about it. Taewoo responds that he will go with the sword and thinks that, as he expected, Hwee seems nice. That must be why he drove to help some kid he talked to for 5 minutes, just because he asked for help. Meanwhile, Hwee looks outside the window where 3 students are fighting, and then he asks Taewoo if he happens to know the basic skills required to be a hunter. The boy replies that he does not know about it, and he tells him that it is a fall. Someone holds him from behind and throws him out of the room because Hong said that when one's heart feels heavy, one should push one's body to work. Hwee says to himself that he seems like a nice guy, and he takes it back because he is awake and sturdy. A few hours later, he was in a classroom and stated that the classes would resemble today for a while, and Miseon Kiman would teach the mages in the morning while the others would be training with the hunters from Daesan. He asked that the student learn to clear dungeons with him in the afternoon. Meanwhile, a student raises his hand and asks if the transfer student will follow the same schedule, and he replies that he may be a year younger, but is in the same class as him. Choi asks about the new runes, and he replies that they are all mages, so he still has much to learn about magic first. After that, Hwee asks Park about her disciples' class and how magic is going. Then he advises her not to be greedy and to review her work. Now it's time to talk about the red guide they handed in previously. Hwee smiles and says he reckons he gave them enough compliments last time, so it's time for criticism. He asked them to write that it was advised to eliminate the goblin guards first. However, this mistake happened because they did not understand the habits of goblins well enough. Moreover, goblins are highly cautious creatures. After hearing that, Tiwoo thinks he would be at a security firm if he were in a suit, and thinks he can trust him. He looks at Hwee and says that, although for some reason, he tells him everything because something feels oddly familiar about him. Hwee looks at the notes and states that the goblins will switch to a defensive formation at this rate and will not even make it to the core. Because of the swarming goblins, it will become hard to retreat to the gate. After that, he asks students what they will do from there, and Hyunwook replies that as far as he knows, the goblins are sensitive to sound and smell, so it would be dangerous to start a fire since it might block their retreat route and they will generate smoke to neutralize their sense of smell. He adds that the goblins will start to depend on hearing in that case, and after that, he, the captain, will go in the opposite direction of the gate to eliminate the battling units. They ask about the reason for it, and he replies that he will do that to lure them, and then they ask him about the other hunters. Hyunwook replies that clearing the dungeon is no longer an option, so they should head to the gate and escape. Hwee asks him how he will escape from the dungeon after he buys enough time. He replies that he worries about it because it cannot be helped, even if he fails. Hwee states that he understands what he is saying because he will play the role of bait so the others can escape. He asks him why he has to do it, and he replies that he will do it because he is the captain. Then Hwee asks the other class if they agree with him, and one of the girls states that Hyunwook is the strongest after all. After hearing that, Hwee informs him that the captain is Seo Hanseong, not him, and he says he will act as bait to buy him enough time to escape. Then he asks him what he will do in that condition, and he replies that he will stop him and take the role from him. Hwee states that it is ridiculous. He is very patient with them because he knows they do not have much experience, and since Tiwoo is here, he does not want to act this way if he can help it. After that, he asks Hyunwook to stand up and ask him to remember the day he tried the pixie dung again when he said he would quit. He adds that he is sorry for stopping him then, so he should just quit because he is someone who should not be going into dungeons. Hwee tells him that he will sacrifice himself to save others, and he has seen plenty of raid teams wiped out by people like him. He asks him whether he sacrifices himself for others. He still treats lives as if they are disposable. Hwee looks at the class and says he wants to try growing haricots in school. He checks on the sprout every morning, but he would feel disappointed when he sees no signs of green in the pot. When the sprout began to grow, he realized that watching something grow is a difficult task, even for haricots, that takes a long time. He adds that since Mr. Hong raised him, he too will watch over them with patience, and they will eventually grow into independent adults who can look after themselves if given enough care, time, and effort, which is what he thought. He looks at Hyun and wonders why they regressed while he was away and why they cannot follow the proper approach, because he is teaching them the basics step by step. After that, one of the students asks him if the dungeon will disappear if the raid fails. Hwee writes something on the board and states that it does not, because as long as they stay alive, they can challenge repeatedly, and it is not even an S-rank dungeon, and asks them why they would risk their life to escape a goblin dungeon. He adds that since healers do not usually have to enter the dungeon themselves, excluding Yoo Hyun and Kang Tiwoo, the 7 of them find a way to escape the dungeon without leaving any stragglers in that situation. Hwee explained that there is one route per person, and it is their homework. After that, it appears on the screen that a rank fighter named Oh Hyunwook has completed 156 raids, and it is announced that his information access level will be upgraded. This document has been censored due to diplomatic issues. A few days later, Soonjin goes to Hwee and asks him to make firecrackers. Soonjin then explains that the loud ones have to move around. She states that they will release many firecrackers to mess with the goblin's senses and blow them up when the time is right. They ask him how she will make them, and she replies that there are 2 mages in the party, so it is probably possible, and then she asks him if it is not a bad idea. Hwee looks at her and thinks that he likes her confidence, which is better than the attitude of other students. Hui inquires who she got that idea from. Is it from Hunter? Or is it from Im Daesan? She starts laughing, and then Hui takes her name and says that Soonjin has passed. Then, a student asks him if he is allowed to ask for advice. Jerry replies that, of course, as they are learning, it is only natural to receive professional help. Lee is shocked to hear that, and then he runs, saying that he will ask, too. Hui gets annoyed at him and asks him to return to his seat. Then he explains that since asking professional hunters for advice was Soonjin's idea, they are not allowed to use it again. After that, Choi Jin-woo says that they can make firecrackers. After a while, Hui says that Choi Jin-woo has also passed. Choi becomes happy, and then one of the students asks Hui why he passed, as he had copied Soonjin's idea. Choi states that Mr. Hui mentioned that asking for help from the pros was her idea, which means that firecrackers had not been used yet. Hui adds that small clues he might pass without a second thought often become the key to clearing a dungeon, so he should always stay vigilant and pay attention. After that, Hui ends his class and tells Lee and Hyunwook that it is okay to take more time, so they should give it some more thought. Moreover, he will give each of them a sticker if they pass. The next day, it was announced that at around 2 p.m. today, Hong and 9 other hunters successfully cleared the dungeon in Chorwon, Gangwon. Hui looks at his mobile, and Hong tells him that his principal is finally back at school, yet he greets him with a sigh. Jerry replies that it is because he took so long, and then Hong winks his eye and asks him if the Messian told him, and he replies that it is not the case, but he hopes that he will never return. Hong responds graciously, and then Hui states that Hunter Jai is brewing coffee for them outside and asks if he wants him to bring a cup. He replies that he prefers instant coffee, and then he places a cup of coffee before him. Hui thanks him, and he asks Hui about the class with the kids, and he replies that, to begin with, the way they think is wrong. He adds that, according to Hunter Lee, there did not seem to be any problems, and they do well in combat. But honestly, he thinks Hyunwook's combat ability is around that of a B-rank hunter right now. But he has a little twist here. He heard Jiyeon took the same theory class as Tiwoo. So he was terrified that she might pick up something strange if he left her alone. Hong looks at him and says that he heard from Jiyeon that he said no one would appreciate her for risking her life to clear a dungeon, and all it does is increase her suffering, so she must put his life first. Hui wonders if it sounds negative, and then Hong asks him to continue the class with that theme. He adds that sometimes, some people mistakenly think that no one but them can clear the dungeon. Hui says he had to save a guy like that in the recent raid, too. Hong responds that he cannot let his students become dumb, and then Hui asks him if he reckoned that he had not called him here to say that. Hong replies that, from what he heard, he has been entrusted with his job by the hunters from Daesan. Hui replies that it is called dividing the tasks, and from lectures on monsters, there is always Mr. Hong's dungeon exploration manual to rely on. Mr. Hong is surprised to learn that and asks how he knows about his dungeon manual. He replies that he has overheard the Daesan hunters talking about it. This says that he should have used it to teach the students first, and then asked him why he only gave it to the Dapark hunters. He replies that he was thinking of doing it later, which is unimportant right now. Then he shows him a paper and asks him to look at it. The modern runes were reinterpreted, and various runes were used for dungeon exploration and monster hunting. Hong shows him the notes and says it is about time they announce the runes. He explains that there are 30 runes to announce, which is the sample, so he should let him know if he would like to add anything. Hui asks him for a short explanation, and he replies that it is how to make those stiff-necked mages let their guard down, or so he has heard. Hui responds that he thinks this will do as it is, and then Hong asks him if he is sure he checked it properly and if he will look at the author. Hui looks at the names of Daeon, Dapark, and Kim Kiman and says it is just as he was previously told and looks fine. Hong asks him if it is okay not to put the name of the mage who created these runes, which he knows. He replies that it could attract unwanted attention, so if the arc figures something out, it will bother some, so this is fine, and he thinks that he cannot take back his words on announcing runes to the new world now. Hui says that an archmage may be inspired by these and create something even more incredible, and then they can save time, which benefits humanity. Hong states that if the arc gets involved, things will get messy, and then Hui asks him if he finds anything about the perpetrators of the attack on the orphanage. Hong replies that he has nothing so far. He has searched far and wide and asked everyone who could know anything but got nothing, and he was always just a figure in rumors surrounded by mystery. There was still nothing useful from the data left in the orphanage since they are investigating the orphanages linked through the support foundation. With any luck, he should be able to meet his younger siblings soon. Hui smiles and says it sounds good, and the way home trained him was simple. Moreover, it heightened his survival instincts, forcing him to adapt to mana. However, if he applies the same methods to Tiwoo, he is too weak and cannot even see mana. Hwee thinks that Tiwoo just learned how to fall safely, and if he increased the intensity here, he might run away, so that will not do, and he should start with the basics. Then he asks Tiwoo if it should not be hard for him to feel the mana. So just like him, he is sensitive to mana, so they have to set things right now. Tiwoo asks him if it is bad for him to be sensitive, and he replies that there is more to keep track of. But once he properly adapts, it is actually good, and he can even detect the locations of traps or where spells are cast. After that, Hwee casts a spell, and all the students are surprised to see that. Hwee asks him not to enter the circle because he will get burned. Then Hwee tells Tiwoo that he will now guess what he writes on the ground, and he asks if he is supposed to see that with his eyes closed. Jerry replies that he can keep his eyes open because he will not see them anyway. After a while, Hwee asks him to guess what he wrote here, and he wonders what he even does. A few minutes later, Tiwoo is still confused and cannot guess the world. He says that he really cannot tell. Hwee says it's fine to guess wrongly, so tell him what you feel. Meanwhile, Hong interrupts them and says that it sounds like a fun lesson he got over there, and Hwee replies that he would appreciate it if he could stay silent and do nothing like usual. Hong feels emotional damage and again gets back to his previous position. However, Tiwoo does his best to guess the word and tells him that he thinks it is a circle. Hwee replies that it is correct and asks if he has started feeling it, and he replies that he is vaguely starting to feel it. Then Hwee asks him to continue. It turns dark, and Hwee thinks he can go home on time after finishing today's lesson. He wonders why he is working overtime. After that, he looks at Hyunwook and asks him why he is here and what he could want to come to his teacher's dorm to ask. Hyunwook replies that it is about the person he mentioned last time and asks him what he would do if he were not a hunter. Hwee responds that he was a police officer and thinks his main job was investigating crimes involving hunters, so it is safe to say it's similar. Those investigations were confidential enough to warrant censorship and allowed for immediate execution if necessary. After hearing that, Hyunwook says that he thought all he had to do was sacrifice himself to become a better person, as he mentioned before. But if that is not the case, he does not know how to prove it. Hwee looks at him and asks him if he should at least be able to figure that out by himself. Then he says that a self-sacrificing and powerful hunter is the best asset in preventing world destruction. But that only applies if they are still alive and in one piece. Hwee thinks that he needs him to last long enough for him to keep using him for the next 20 years. So they should think about the things that Hong told him. Jihyun's nagging, Park's inconsiderate stories, and Hyunwook's infuriating words. Hwee tells him that the world does not change even if he dies by himself, so it is all over. If he dies, no one will remember him, and those who know him personally will mourn for him, but that is about it. So, if he wants to prove or achieve something, he should live on until he does it. After saying that, Hwee says he cannot quite remember who said this to him. It moves to a flashlight where someone holds Hwee's hand and tells him that he should never do that again, and then Hwee shouts and asks him to let him go. He says that he will be leaving this place soon because there will not be anyone to stop the director after he is gone, so he should behave. Hwee asks him about the bragging, and he asks if he does not like it when he says such things, so he does not like Hwee either. He looks at Jae and says that if he continues like this, he can also be disposed of, so he is sure he noticed that the atmosphere around here has been strange lately. He asks Hwee if his pride is more important than his life, and he is sure he knows they need to make it out of there alive. The boy smiles and says that he heard what they said to him, and that he is not going to listen to what he says. He should try not to get others involved because this will be the last time they get to talk, so he should tell them his name. Hwee looks at him and tells him that his name is number 12. The boy asks him if he knows his name, and Hwee replies that he thinks his name is number 3. Number 3 laughs and says that as long as they stay alive, they will meet again one day. The flashback ends, and the guessing game between Hwee and Tiwoo continues. Then he makes a wrong guess. He tells Hwee he was torn between scare and triangle, and says it was close. Hwee says that they should wrap up this session here and return to the classroom, and he replies that it feels awkward to go back alone because no one talks to him either. Hwee looks at him and thinks this is unexpected. He thought he would quickly get along with the others, perhaps because he had only been hanging out with younger ones. MJ asks why he does not initiate a conversation with them, and he replies that Hyunwook and Lee are scary, and he cannot even imagine talking to them. In the class, Lee asks if he cannot just tell them the answer, and he replies that he is already being super lenient here. Lee smiles and states that the others have already taken the easy ones, and he keeps rejecting the ones he came up with. Jerry replies that it is because he keeps saying nonsense like destroying the core, and responds that escaping and destroying the core are the same. Then she asks him to keep thinking, and then asks Hyunwook about himself, and says that if he cannot come up with anything, they could conclude here. Hyunwook raises his hand and says that he came up with a method. Hwee is surprised to hear that and thinks that he seems strangely enthusiastic for some reason. Hyunwook replies that first, smoke the area to numb the goblin's sense of smell, forcing them to depend on their hearing. Then he will act as bait, and Hwee replies that it sounds the same as his first plan because back then, the fact that he could not return was the problem, so if he has solved that. Hyunwook replies that he has solved that because he will kill all the goblins and make it alive. Hwee says that he is not skilled enough to do that, and he replies that he will take them on and head towards the gate once he starts getting pushed back. And it is his victory once he gets to the gate. Everyone is shocked to hear his plan, and Hwee smiles and thinks that he can help him build up any skills he lacks. But he will have to overcome a lack of confidence and a weak mindset on his own, so he has concluded. Hwee smiles and tells him that he passed, and that is it for today, so everyone should head out and get in the car. Lee gets shocked and asks him why that is passed because it is the same as what he said. Hwee replies that it just means he is lacking if he does not understand why. He thinks that while Choi Jin-woo and Yoo Hyun still have trouble understanding, the others seem to have understood it well. Then Hwee asks Taewoo to remember what he said earlier, and he replies that, as he said, he needs to know a lot to become a hunter. Hwee says that he has already told the Dapark hunters, so he should go and get his books from them and write a summary of each book. He adds that he is doing well, so he should not worry. From what he sees, he has talent. Taewoo starts smiling, and then Lee gets jealous and looks strangely at him. After that, Hwee repeatedly looks at his students and asks them to go home. They all get up and leave the classroom. Meanwhile, Lee is still sad in the classroom, so Hwee goes to him and wonders why this scene feels so familiar. He calls his name. Lee starts sniffling, and Hwee thinks it is not what he thinks it is. While sniffling, Lee tells Hwee that even though he can see that he does not have talent, he may not be suited to become a hunter. After that, he starts crying badly, then runs out of the classroom and asks him never to mind if he says anything. Hwee looks at him, wonders what is wrong with him now, and wonders if some rite of passage involves rebelling for kids in this era.